Well, welcome, motherfuckers. It's Jaffe. How you doing? We are here. Apologize for being late. Totally my fault. Technology and I, as you know, do not get along that well. There are no riots in Ireland. I lied about that. I was going to keep that running for about 20 minutes. And Brenda Romero, the infamous, famous, amazing designer who I hope to have on the show very soon, came in and fucked up that. Thank you, Brenda, for totally taking the piss out of my little bullshit, but I appreciate it. All right, you guys, I'm not even going to do. Oh, I need to know it. You know who this is. Here we go, baby. This is Jazzy John Romero. John Romero, how are you, man?
Great. How's it going?
It's going well. I appreciate you doing this. I got to tell you something. The first time, because I know I met Brenda, your wife, wife or partner? It's wife, right?
Wife, oh yeah.
Okay, somebody I was reading it last night. I'm like, partner. I think they've been married for a while now. But
Yeah.
I think I met Brenda first, and then she introduced me to you. And the first thing you ever said to me, I think it was you were doing something for like the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences, and we did like an interview on stage. Is you were the first guy I knew that had Siri, and on the iPhone, and you were like, ask it what to do with a dead body. And I'm like, that was my first time I actually met you. But the first time I saw you, and I want to jump right into this because, and by the way, John will be taking your calls in just a little bit. So if you want, put yourself in the call-in waiting room. Later on, we will bring you on to have a conversation with Jonathan. So I was at E3. It might have been the one in Atlanta. Right, and I think maybe Twisted Metal 1 had come out, Twisted Metal 2.
97.
Yes, and Twisted, or 96. I don't know when it was, but it's sometime in that, maybe it was, I don't know when it was. It was in that era.
I was at the 97 Atlanta one.
Okay, so I had a little bit of success, but I hadn't had massive success. Not that we ever had success like you had success, but I had never, I hadn't made a mark yet really in terms. And I was watching you play against people death matching, and all I saw was the hair and the head from behind. And I knew who you were, and it was really interesting. And I wanted to ask you about this because I was starstruck. Not when I met you later, but when I first, because you were really, people talk about you like, oh, he's the first video game rock star. And I take issue with that. I say, well, that's David Crane, but fine. You're the second or first video game rock star, right? But when you were that, right, when you were going through that and Doom and Quake and all of that, what kind of awareness? Because people ask me all the time, they're like, I literally have gone into GameStops and they, not as much anymore, but they're like, do you know who you are? I'm like, yeah, no, I am fully aware of who I am. But I mean, but it never, and I've had people wait in line to get autographs and stuff, and they literally, they're nervous. They can't talk, and they're, when you were in the height of that, were you aware of like, what was your consciousness and cognizance of that moment for you? Were you walking around like, I know I'm the shit, or were you walking around like, I know how people respond to me, or what was your feelings about it?
It's pretty funny. Oh yeah, by the way, first I'll talk, the first, for me, the first video game rock star was actually marketed almost like a rock star back in '83.
This was the EA stuff?
Yeah, Bill Budge. He's the one with the so he was even called the rock star, like in magazines and stuff back then.
Sony marketing wanted to do that with PlayStation 1 designers. They were showing us those EA ads, and I think they had a real famous photographer shoot them all.
Yeah, they did, like, Rolling Stone photographer.
Yeah, and they were like, let's do that with you guys. And I'm like, I'm not beating myself up, but have you seen what I look like? I mean, I'm not a bad looking guy or a good looking guy, but really? You gonna do that? But anyway, yeah, sorry. So but yeah, so anyway, one of the you've probably one of the most successful game designers to walk the earth. I think that's fair. That's fair, right?
Thanks.
It's not thanks. Yeah. It's not a compliment. I mean, it's just a fact. You're a famous guy, right? You still get recognized when you go out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. And I remember when it was probably Wolfenstein where it really started, like people were had recognized us when we had just shipped Wolfenstein and we went on a vacation to Disney World.
Okay.
And people that were in the hot tub next to us were just like, are you the guys that made Wolfenstein 3D? And we're like, because we were talking about stuff.
Right.
And they just overheard us. And this it just come out like 2 months earlier, so it was like it went everywhere.
Right.
So it was like, whoa, somebody recognized us. That's crazy. And we did our first radio like phone interview thing. We had Channel 8 come to the house and take video and do a night, like do a news piece on us and stuff. So that was the beginning, like right as soon as Wolfenstein was released. And then Doom was just like insane. And so many people got into Doom, like everywhere that we went where we were located, everybody knew like that's the place where Doom was made,
Right.
because everyone was really proud of the fact that it was made in Texas and Mesquite and all that stuff.
Right.
So the mall across the street, everyone that worked at the mall, like anywhere that we went, the Comp USA, which is where we got all of our stuff. And I remember just like coming out of the Comp USA, and I had driven my Ferrari there once. And Sean Green was coming out with me back, because we both went there to go pick up some, I don't know, network cables or whatever. Okay. And we were coming out, and there was a guy who was like staring at the Ferrari, and he came over and as I'm walking towards it, he's walking towards me, and he's like, "Oh my God, are you John Romero?" And he pulls out some paper, and he's just like shaking. And I just like took the paper and the pen. And I said, "Yeah, no problem. Here, like you like Doom, huh?" And just started talking to him. And I'm just nice to people that are excited to see somebody who made games that they really liked.
Right.
And that nowadays I speak all over the world.
Right.
I'm in Europe, so it's a really great location to just go to all these countries. And we usually do like a signature line kind of thing. So I give a talk, and then at some point there's a line for people to come get posters or something. It's like a way to get something signed. Mm-hmm. And those lines are always 3 hours. It's like a 3-hour line. And they have to have security and stuff to keep people there. But it's great because people want to tell their story about like what they loved about Doom, that they used to play with their dad, like all these cool stories. And I totally know that I would want to say the same thing to like Nasser Jabeli and the people that made a difference to me when I was growing up and playing games. And so they're doing the same thing, and that's great, and it's great that they have an opportunity to do it. And the fact that I traveled to all these countries, there's a lot of people can't just travel all over the place. So
right. That's
and so it's really great because I can go somewhere like St. Petersburg and Russia, and like they never these people just don't travel all over the place, so they get to actually go to this one place, and finally get to see somebody that they've heard about or have played their game and stuff. So it's really, it's just really nice, and I like hearing fan stories. I'm never tired of talking about any of my games.
Right.
I talk about all of them. Daikatana, you name it, I talk about every game.
Right. Well, do you feel, because and I struggle with it a little bit, but it may just be because, well, it's definitely because of my brain, but I have a lot of people say similar things. And again, let's be clear. Anybody watching, any fucking trolls watching, nobody that has a functioning brain would ever think I would compare the success that we were fortunate to have with the success you guys have. But we had a nice ride there for a while with a lot of games that were hitting the zeitgeist. And in that, I have the same thing where people come up and talk about our games and say, "Oh, I played this with my dad. I have these, these really heartbreaking but wonderful stories about, my brother's not around anymore, but he and I grew up playing Twisted Metal split screen, blah, blah, blah." And on one hand, obviously, I can relate because I've been fans of people before. When I met Steven Spielberg, I was just like, I barely remember it. I have pictures, so I know what happened, but I barely remember it. But at the same time, though, I want to tell them, I always want to say, it's like, on behalf of all of us who made the games, thank you. But so much of that is nostalgia, and so much of that is this time in your life was, you were ripe for, it could have been anything, and it happened to be this. And I always feel like I feel a responsibility to kind of frame it for them so there's a better understanding of sort of almost like tearing down the artifice of fame. And I mean, does that ever, or you just like, dude, just fucking ride it, it's fun? I mean, what, does that ever get into your head, or not really? That's just a me thing.
No, I don't ever try to take anything away from whatever people's memories were, because everyone is so different. Everyone's situation is so different. And, when you think back at any time of your life, anywhere in your life, a lot of times you can just like, you remember what it was like, what it felt like, maybe even the smells from that
Hmm.
time, the things you were doing, how much it meant to you. And, like, it's not the same when you get older, like
No.
the things that you listened to back then, you don't listen to those things all the time now,
Right.
so you have to respect the memory, if you know what I mean, because that's all we are, our memory,
I
right?
do, and I think that's such a more healthy way of looking at it. And why are you healthier than I am mentally? Why is that okay? How did that, you made, because I've read a lot of Masters of Doom and all this stuff. Your childhood, goodness gracious, right? I mean, it's fair to say it was rough, right?
Yeah.
Did you go to
Yeah.
therapy? I mean, how did you get, you seem like a
No.
healthy fella. How did that, you just exercised it all through your work or what?
I wonder if it has anything to do. Well, first of all, my biological dad was always just a funny guy. He was always just like making jokes and stuff. My mom's always positive.
Right.
She's always been positive. So, I heard that like you inherit your mother's brain basically, and
Okay.
there's things that you get from your father, but a lot of it comes like the intelligence comes from your mother.
Really?
Um, that's what I've heard.
Okay.
And my mom was really smart.
Right.
So, I was just lucky to have a really great mom. And so I think that just having like where I grew up, there was never a focus on what you have. There was never like a material focus on anything. It was just like great food, hanging out with each other, the family,
Right.
and nothing that when you're a kid, anything that you experience just seems normal to you. So
That's
you
right.
don't know that it's not normal because that's how you grow
There's
up.
nothing.
So it
Yes.
just seems like that's normal, right? And a lot of times when your situation changes, that's the new normal. So you don't look back and go, "Oh man, that was really horrible," because you've already normalized everything that you've been through.
Right.
So when you get to the new change, you just feel like, "Oh, this is even cooler. This is even better." And a lot of times kids they're not really retrospective, right? Kids just kind of keep on moving forward. It's all about pushing forward. And so for me, I just, we moved to a nicer place. I liked that, like, oh, we can drink real milk now and not powdered milk, and
Right.
like stuff like that. And then when I finally got exposed to computers when I was 11 years old, that's where I was just like, holy crap, I love this. This is great. And I love arcade games. And it was just never looking back,
Well, I mean, what's really I don't understand the timing of this. I wanted to ask you, and I'll ask Brenda when I talk to her, but when you do read about your history and you read about Masters of Doom and all that, it's so romanticized. But I was there as well. I'm a little younger than you, but I was there for the arcades. I was there for the Apple IIs. I was,
Oh yeah.
and I remember I started taking computer class, learning BASIC when I must have been about 8. And I
Yeah.
remember walking into the people, they had like 20 computers, which, what? In Alabama, it's like, are you out of your fucking mind? What is this?
Yeah.
It's like Westworld, the original Westworld. But anyway,
Yeah.
you're walking in there, and on the shelf, I had never seen video games in boxes on shelves before. So it was like
Yeah.
literature. It's like, and one of the boxes was Wizardry. And if you remember the original Wizardry box, it's beautiful black box with the
Yeah.
foil stamp of the dragon. And I'm like, Brenda worked on that, right? Brenda, but Brenda's not that much older than I am. How the fuck is she working on Wizardry when I'm 8? Like, was she like
She
a genius at like 14 or 15 making games or something?
No, no, she was doing basically back then, if you needed help, you would call the company. Like
Okay.
you would call the 1-8, the
Yeah,
maybe not
yeah.
even a 1-800, maybe
Whatever.
just the
Yeah.
local number. And so she was the person who needed to know everything about the game
I
to
see.
answer
Okay.
anybody's questions, because there were a couple, bugs that were rare
Sure.
in the game, but also people just want help.
Right.
So they would call up and it goes that she still remembers the phone number.
That's awesome.
And
That's
she
awesome.
remembers everything about Wizardry 1, how to
Ugh,
get through the entire game.
great
She's played
fucking
it
game.
so many times.
Yeah.
So she lived playing that. Robert Woodhead did all the programming. Andrew Greenberg did the design with, Robert. and they created this game, and it was written in Pascal on the Apple II, which was a pretty rare thing at that time. And it was real early too, 1981. That was still, Ultima was in BASIC,
Yeah.
and Woodhead did it in Pascal. And I finally got to meet up and talk to Woodhead for hours, not that many years ago. And before meeting him, I didn't know anything about him. So I was just like, how much did he really know back when he made Wizardry? And it was just like unbelievably blown away when I got to talk to him. He knew everything about that computer. And he chose Pascal because he's a computer science guy, and he wanted to do that. He just wanted to do it. He could have done it in assembly language,
right?
But he wanted to do it in Pascal. So it was. But anyway, he designed this game, and it was huge. It was really huge. It helped pave the way for Final Fantasy.
Oh no, it's a classic. It's an absolute classic. I wanted to ask about that because well, I'll get back to that, but it's kind of all related because this idea now, I saw, I don't know I know you mentioned to me before we started, you don't really do a lot of social media, which is probably very healthy and wise. That's another reason that you're probably more mentally healthy than I am. But I don't know how much time you spend on message boards that aren't your own, that aren't Romero games and stuff, but I'm sure you're familiar with the forum like NeoGAF.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So there's a
been
message.
Around for a long time.
Right. There was a message the other day that was talking, I think it was about Cliff Bleszinski making a new video game. And somebody literally put you and me and Cliff in the same message going, what is it about these old guys that kind of keeps them stuck in making the same kind of games over and over?
Boomer shooter.
Well, the funny thing is you don't. If anybody's actually familiar with your post-id work, I mean, I was a fan of was it Ravenwood?
Ravenwood. Yeah,
I was a fan of Ravenwood, which was a Facebook game, which really was the first kind of Farmville Facebook game that actually had Oh, there you go. That had exploration of the space. I know people are like, well, big fucking deal, but back then it was like, it's a farm, make it. But I was like, I can explore and what's in the cave and all this shit.
Yeah, what's that thing over there? I want to go chop my way over to it.
That's exactly
and that's
right.
Civilization. That was a Civilization.
But I had never seen that in a free-to-play kind of Facebook game, right? So, I mean, I certainly don't think if you're familiar with what you do, that you're focused in the same way maybe I would be on genre. But do you ever struggle with that? Because people are always surprised when they're like, Jeffy, don't you want to fucking make another big fucking game? And I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm totally good. I laid my bricks. I'm happy doing what I'm doing right now. But I mean, do you ever look back and go like, I have to get there again. I have to be that big again. Or, I mean, how much do you struggle with that?
I never, it's funny because when I was starting to when I was making my first games, I was always saying, I was always writing stuff like John Romero, ace programmer, future rich person. It's crazy shit like that. And I did newsletters. I created clubs. I did advertisements for my games. You name it. I did everything that I saw in the magazines. I would create the same stuff for my own games, even though almost nobody saw that stuff.
Okay.
But it was just like, I cared, you have stuff all over your walls there. And a lot of times kids have posters of heavy metal or like women or whatever on their bedroom walls. I had video game ads all over my walls. Right. Ripped out of magazines.
I had movie posters from Spielberg movies. I was the same way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
But I never was like, or I haven't been like, I have to do something gigantic. It's not something that I have to do. All I care about is what's interesting to do. If it blows up, it blows up. But if it doesn't, so what? I'm having fun doing it.
Right.
That's all that matters.
I mean, that's how I look at it as well. I think it's like a lot of people maybe it's the privilege of having been somewhat successful, or in your case, extremely successful, until you've walked that road. You think that road is everything. And then you walk it and you're like, it's like you said, when you're a kid, it's just normal. And then now this is normal. Right. And so I get that. Okay, good. It's good to hear, and I think it's good for people to hear because, especially, I've noticed that a part of the younger generation. I don't know. I mean, your kids are how old now?
Well, the oldest is he's 33.
Right, but you have a
The
younger
oldest,
you have a son who did
the
the
youngest, oh
taco.
yeah, Gunman Taco
Yeah.
Truck. He's about to turn 17.
Okay. So I have noticed that because I have a 17-year-old and I have a 15-year-old, and I have noticed is that they are not them, but their friends in that age really seem, maybe it's Instagram or whatever, but it's that sort of relevancy of fame and all that stuff,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's like they have to chase that. But maybe that's just an age thing. I don't know. What about okay, how do I put this? So I don't know, Jeffy. How do you put it? I'm working on it, John. Give me a minute. But I do find in other mediums that creators are able to stay more with the zeitgeist longer. But I don't know a lot of people in games. Maybe Sid Meier, but he's kind of got his own little curated audience that there's probably a very definitive ceiling, but it's a very high ceiling. But I mean, do you think there's something inherent to the medium itself that doesn't allow us to have or haven't yet a Clint Eastwood or a Spielberg or someone who's making their work well into their 60s and 70s that is still really connecting with a lot of people? Is that an issue of the medium, or is that just we haven't been around long enough? I mean, 50 years is a long time for a medium.
Yeah, we probably haven't been around long enough, but there's also not that many people who stay in the industry a really long time.
Right.
And you can only do that if you you can only do stuff, cool stuff later if you're there still. Um, and I think that there's lots of people in film that have been in film and no one knows who they are, but they've been there for decades. But the really big ones like Spielberg, etc. One of the things about that is just like opportunity. Getting the opportunity to do something. It's not like we don't have like really cool ideas that are based on things people love doing now or would probably love doing based on what they love doing now, what the next thing would be.
Okay.
But having the opportunity to do it, and the thing is, these things cost millions of dollars. So you have to find companies or people or investors or whatever that would want to put money in to
Right.
do something huge like that. And so that's always a tough thing to do. It's very similar to making a movie. You got to sell your idea, and people need to know that you can deliver on it. And they always look at what's the last thing you did and all that kind of stuff. So it's not that there's no ideas, but
Right.
that there's just an opportunity, depending on what you're trying to do,
Right.
to make a really big thing.
Well, I mean, is it fair to say that if you have your druthers, and again, I know it's, you don't want to always just be like John and Brenda, but you guys, that's sort of, it's a big deal. It's a power couple thing, right? I mean, you guys
Yeah.
are both like amazing designers. I remember going to dinner with you guys in San Diego, and I was just blown away by the amount of just design vernacular, and even at dinner, it was clearly at the forefront of you guys' mind. I mean, do you think it's fair to say that if you have your druthers, you'll be designing games until the end? I mean, it is your...
That's exactly correct. Yeah,
Okay.
totally.
Okay.
Totally. I mean, as long as I can keep on doing it, I have no plans on like, now I'm sick of games. I must do something else.
Right.
I love making games. I mean, we just did a game jam this last weekend
Oh, really?
yeah, just had a couple of guys from the office come over and did an 18-hour jam. Made a really cool little game.
Right. Are you
Um,
still? I know you program and code and design, and I know on Empire, which we'll get to, you were doing audio programming. Is there still? Do you have a passion for one over the other? I mean, I know you people think of you as designer, but
yeah.
what is your real passion in development?
It's funny. I love coding more than anything, most
Yep.
likely. But whatever it takes to make a cool game.
Right.
So when we were like, as an example, when we were doing the game jam, what are all three of us going to do? Well, my job basically was like, I'm going to create the entire playable space. I'm going to create, I'm going to put all the characters in there. I'm going to put them on all their paths. I'm going to do all the audio to make it sound great. I'll hook it up as well. Like I'll make the audio, I will hook up the audio in the code
Right.
and make all that work because I want the game to work really well. And the other two guys can code their heads off.
Right.
And so I'll do the things that I'll be better at. You know what I mean?
Right.
But if I'm not, when we were making Gunman Taco Truck, it was all code mostly. I mean, I did all the audio stuff, but it was like each of us had our own segments of the game to program.
Right.
So I programmed all my stuff, and the other two guys, my oldest son Michael, and then Ian Dunbar, he was coding. We all had different segments to code.
Okay.
And and so I love programming, so I just like doing all of it. Like whatever is going to be more impactful or helpful,
Got it.
then I'll do that.
Okay.
Like on Empire of Sin, it's Brenda's game. So what part of the game can I do? I did production for 2.5 years for the first 2.5 years, and the audio. So I had composers, and I was doing sound effects, and I was hooking all that stuff up in the game and assigning things and doing all that, and then all the VO, and it's like, well, we don't have an extra person to do this. I'll do it.
Right. It's very old. It's very old school. At least for me, coming from like a Sony and a big company and all that, it's very much sounds like the way games.
It's more indie.
Yeah, that's right. That's very very cool. So somebody in the chat is asking. I don't want to get back to this, but I did have to ask because I think it's a good question. When you were younger and you were putting up the posters and all this on your wall and you were saying, a John Romero game, I mean, did you chase fame, or was that a byproduct? Or were you like, no, man, I wanted to be famous? Like, was that a goal?
It's funny. I think that when I was doing that, it was like, I want my name on the box cover, like games had people's names on the box covers,
Online.
right?
Yeah.
Or even the earlier games, the Sierra, really, when it was online systems, they were putting people's names on the cover, but Sirius, Synergistic, you name it, all those companies, everybody's name was on the box because it was usually made by one person in the early 80s before Teams even happened.
Right.
And so I was always like, yeah, I want my name on the box, and the way that I just focused on people's games and just like played them and wanted to understand them. And, like what, you'd see the name of the company, and if it wasn't a big company, it's like, I wonder if that's his company, or is that some company that someone else owns that how'd they get connected, all of that stuff. So that was always interesting to me. So it's funny how the company thing was always very interesting to me. So I created a company back then, which had published by the time I moved on to the second company, 15 games were published through that first company that I came up with.
How old were you?
Well, I started when I was 11, and that
Holy
company,
shit.
I started the company when I was 14 because that's when I got my computer finally.
Right.
So for 3 years before I had my computer, I was going to the university to basically, it's such a funny story, but the high level is I went to the local college and taught myself computer programming on a mainframe by myself.
Right.
That's how I learned how to code because there were no computers at homes. So that's how I started. And then 3 years later, after going to every store around, Radio Shacks, you name it, and just keep on programming until we get one at home, then I could rock it. Like as soon as I had that computer at home, it was over. And but that was like nonstop game creation at that point.
So it's always all this shit just happened to you, but you're just like, dude, I'm just making games.
Yeah, and the funny thing was I always wanted to be the best. So I was trying the whole time you're trying to make really good games,
right?
But I always was kind of making them fast, and it wasn't like if you read, Jordan Mechner's Karateka journals or his Prince of Persia ones, it took him years to make those games. Like he really stretched it out, and it ended up being really classic, amazing games.
Right.
I never took anything that like 3 months would be crazy, like for me to spend 3 months on a game, and I did that a couple times, and they were really big games.
Right.
But they weren't like spending a year on a game. I guess I just wanted to make games after game after game after game, but I was trying to get better with every game. I'd learn something new with every game. And by the end of the 80s, when everything crashed, when the 8-bit market just got destroyed, I was like, I can't believe I just spent all that time trying to be the best game designer and game
Right.
creator, and it's gone now, and I have to
Right.
start all over again in
Well,
1989.
what did you think? Because I remember everybody talks about that, but as a guy who was into Macs and stuff, the arcades died, but
Yeah.
computer games never went anywhere, though, right? I mean, that
No,
was.
no, but the 8-bit games. So
Oh,
8-bit
oh, oh. Okay,
Apple
you mean
II's,
yeah, yeah,
Commodores, like all those 8-bit systems, that whole market was destroyed at
right.
the end of the
But the
80s.
skills were applicable. You could move. You moved on, obviously. I mean,
I had to move on. Yeah, well,
right.
the thing is, like, when you're programming in a 6502 assembly, that's not 8086 assembly. It's a
Okay.
totally different assembly. But it's like, okay, I have to learn a whole nother computer again. Because back then it wasn't like the language, it was the computer. When you were going to write something back then, you had to know where every byte in the machine did.
Right.
Like, you needed to know everything about it. So it's like, I have to learn another entire machine. This one's got 10 times the memory. So that's going to be fun.
Right.
But I was just like, God, I tried so hard. I tried to make a caretaker. I tried to make a chop lifter. I tried to make a load runner,
Right. Oh my God.
and
Yeah.
just like never like got there.
Right.
And I was just like, God, okay, well, I'm starting over. That's what's going to happen. I'm
That's
starting over.
So the Radio Shack thing is interesting because yeah, I mean that's we didn't have a computer for a while. I would go into Radio Shack in the back, and they would just let me. I mean, I never got beyond basic, but I was writing. I would go up to the toy store and see these Atari games like Sword Quest that I couldn't afford, but the cover was so evocative that I would go down to Radio Shack and start writing an adventure game, like an Infocom game. So it's cool,
Did
man.
you read the interview with the artist who did all the Atari cartridge covers?
I have the book. There's a book called Art
Oh,
of Atari,
right.
and it's amazing. It's a great book, and
He's just like, I had no idea what the game looked like. They just
No.
told me what it was about, and I just made this crazy cover.
and
that
thank
looked
God.
amazing.
And I don't know if you've seen what Tallarico's doing with the Amico, but it's kind of cool to see those covers because they're doing physical copies of Amico games as well as digital for the stores,
Nice.
and they look like the old school painted covers, which I don't know if
Yeah.
the audience today is going to be like, "What the fuck is that? Where's my Photoshop?" But it's beautiful. It's beautiful stuff.
That's great.
I don't want to
it.
tread too much on Doom and everything because everybody knows all the stories, but there were just always a couple of things I was curious about. So you're a programmer, you like programming, you love programming. You're sitting there with Carmack. Is it obvious to you that I mean, this is the press. I've never met the guy, but is it the press will tell you the guy's like a savant, he's a genius, he's one of the best programmers alive. Is it obvious to you when you're working with a guy like that? It's like, look, just don't get in his way programmatically. He's a fucking genius and take your cues from him. Or was it competitive? Or what was that relationship like at a coder versus coder level?
So before I even hired him, I needed a programmer to work in my department. I needed another coder
Yep.
that was really good, right? Like, it was funny because I wasn't just like, I'll just take any coder. I was like, I want a really good programmer in here to so we can really make some good stuff. And I made so many games that I would be working at a job like Softdisk.
Yep.
At night, I'm making games. At daytime, I'm making games. I go home, I'm making different games at night. I sell those games back to Softdisk,
That's all. Okay.
right?
Yep.
Like nonstop.
Right.
So I was making some Apple II games at home. During the day, I'm working on PC games. And so I sell my games and they get published by Softdisk. And on this one issue, when I'm looking for a programmer on this issue of when one of my games had just been published, on that issue, John Carmack had one of his games published. It was called Tennis. And just from playing the game, like back then, it's like when a painter can look at another painter's work, just look at it, you know the technique, you know so much because you've done this for your whole life so far, right? That when you look at it, you kind of know a lot about it. And at that time, back then, I had studied so many programmers' techniques for all of the games on the Apple II that I could look at a game and I'd tell you who wrote it just because of
Just
the way
code.
the art looked on the screen,
Oh, okay.
the way it was drawn on the screen, if they were using like page flipping techniques or not, if they were just using XOR. Like, there were so many things that make up a programmer's style.
Okay.
And so I could tell the style just from looking at the screen. So when I saw Carmack's Tennis game and I could tell how it was coded, I'm just like, this guy's really good. That's smooth. That's not easy to do.
Okay.
And so I said I want to talk to this guy, and they went to the Apple II department since they're the ones who published his stuff, and they said, yeah, it's not going to be interested. We've already tried to hire him twice.
Okay.
And I said, it'll be different if I'm talking to him. So, tell him that this is to interview for making games only, nothing but games all day long with the team, and see if we can get him to an interview. And so that worked.
Okay.
And he came down for an interview. He drove down from Kansas City, and I brought Lane Roth, my another programmer that I was really good friends with, who worked at SoftDisk, and he came because he's also a hardcore assembly language programming expert for the Mac,
Yep.
and the Apple II and the Apple II GS. And so I did Commodore PC and Apple II. So like we covered almost all the machines at that time. So
Right.
when John came down, we had the interview. It was just like for him, oh my God, there's so much I can learn from these guys. This is so good. So he immediately accepted and came down, and we didn't have an office yet, so I couldn't really see in person like what he did. I basically said, here's a computer, here's where you can sit. I'm trying to get the office over here. So maybe it'll take a month or whatever. Just make something. Just code right. something. And so he coded an Apple II game called Catacomb, and he just gave it to the Apple II department. And then I finally got the room, and then I was like, okay, we can move in. So we get in the room together. Lane comes in because I wanted him to be part of the department, to kind of be the interface, because I want no business shit. I don't want to do any of it. I need to be coding. So Lane, it was like, I guess I'll be a manager now. This will be fun for him.
Right.
And John got in there, and it's like, okay, marketing says the first thing you guys need to do before we start working on stuff is we need a demo disc to show everybody what this product is all about, like how good games will be on here. And we want to put 2 games on the first disc, and you have 1 month. So it's just like, so anyway, that's what we did. We basically, just a second.
Yep.
We basically did that. That's where Dangerous Dave came from.
Mm-hmm.
And
so Catacomb and Dangerous Dave were the 2 games that
were the 2 games.
Yep.
The PC version of Catacomb and PC version of Dangerous Dave. They were both Apple II games that basically we just ported, because in 1 month we had no time for creative shit.
Yeah.
That was all just like make it happen. So then we started working on a game called Slordax, and that's when the career decision happened at that point, right? It was like, okay, what do you want to do? And so John, because we can't overlap, so John says, I'm interested in graphics, and I'm interested in like the architecture of the program. And then I'm like, okay, cool, I'll do everything else.
Okay.
So like I'll do the game design, I'll do the levels, I'll do the production, I'll do the audio, I'll do, all that stuff.
Right.
And so he's like, all right. And so that's where he started doing graphics studies. And I gave him the book. I had this Power Graphics programming book that Michael Abrash had written. It had everything in it, which is how the breakthrough in scrolling happened, was like Michael Abrash had that data there. And it was great. Then we started working together, and it was obvious that like, this is great. He's just started on the PC, and he's already just like rocking.
Right.
And then I found out that like, oh yeah, you're an Apple II programmer. How did you actually program on the PC? And he's like, oh, I just rented one for a week and ported my game. I learned it, ported my game in a week, and returned the PC.
Right.
Because the Apple II disc pays $400 for that game, but that PC disc would pay $800, so he could make $1,200 off this one game. So I'm just like, okay, you're really smart,
Yeah.
And so he definitely got smarter and smarter as we worked together.
Okay.
So he like, because he could just focus, and that's all he cared about. Like, he just focused on code from 10 a.m. to at least 10 p.m. every day. And it was just like, just like learning books, like stacks of books, reading through books, and just getting better and better and better. So like when we're coding stuff, it was very fast. Like the game engine was invented the month, like while we're making our first game. The second half of the second month, like the game took 2 months. So the second month is when scrolling technique happened, and then the invention of the game engine happened.
Wow.
Because then we needed to start making Commander Keen because of all the crazy shit that was happening.
Yeah.
And we're going to make games outside of our job. And then to make them that fast, we needed to do programming in a different way, which is like we need to make an engine to create these 3 games on top of this engine and have a common code base to do this shit. So that was like all this stuff happened so fast. Like the amount of things that happened in the second half of 1990 is nuts. And, you know, and so he is just unbelievably smart. Like he will make leaps that people just wouldn't, just wouldn't happen.
Well,
and
well, okay, so obviously Doom and Quake and massive blows up and everything. I mean, I was the minute I knew Doom was like in a different realm. I was in San Diego with my would become my wife, and we were getting some car service done. And we had gone into the garage while they were working on the car, and the guys had figured out a way. You know how they have those computers in the
oh yeah,
they had figured out a way to get Doom running on a fucking garage and
piece
like
of crap. Yeah, garage
I'm
machine.
like, what the fuck? I'm like, that's how big Doom has gotten, But so is it all the stories about the story of like sort of after Quake, and I mean you were you were fired from id, or did you leave id? Like what?
Yeah. So what happened is we had a meeting at the end of 1995.
Yeah.
What are we going to do with Quake? Like the engine's ready. The engine was ready for us to use to make a game.
Yeah.
And at that point, we could have invested some more time in game design to create another way of playing. Like it could have been partially first person, partially something. It could have been all kinds of things, but because the team was burnt out from spending a year making just an engine and throwing away a lot of work because the engine kept getting better and kind of like destroying the work that they had done, that they have to start new stuff. They thought they were making a game, but they weren't. They're making demos basically. Right. So at that point, when you have a burnt out team and the owners are not rallied around like, let's give a push to game design, I was just like, well, it's not going to happen then, because the future was obvious. Game design is the reason why you play games.
Right.
Like number one, it's like why do you watch a movie? It's not because it's on 70 millimeter film or that it's at 48 FPS, right? Like you watch it because of the idea and who's in it and like the experience. Mm-hmm. And so when you have a company that's not going to be behind that, and the fact that the technology that we just delivered will be overtaken by video card manufacturers the next year, that's not something that seems like, it's like I want to be behind game design. Right. More than, I think the marriage of the two is really important. Like awesome tech, awesome design means great game. But not focusing on the design part means we're making tech demos, and I'm not, that's not why I'm here. So I decided I'm probably not going to stay after this game. And then that was in November. And then in January, I decided, I'm leaving right after Quake. So I called up Tom Hall, and he was working on Prey. And I basically said, when I ship Quake, let's start another company. He's like, hell yeah, let's do it. So after I had finished mastering Quake and getting it ready for CDs and all that stuff, I basically took a vacation, I believe, or maybe I took a vacation and I came back and did the mastering. And right after the mastering and stuff was done, I had called up GT Interactive to be the first publisher possibly to talk to about this. And the day after I called up GT was when they basically said, we want you to resign. Okay. And I'm like, oh, gee, well, I was going to resign anyway, but that's an interesting timing.
Right. Did you ever find out if they knew? I mean,
they couldn't say anything about it, but the thing is, GT was our publisher for Quake.
Right. Okay.
Right. And so it was just like, okay, well, I can't keep a secret, I guess.
So what is the relationship with John Carmack now? Are you guys good, or I mean,
yeah, we don't really talk that often, but there's no animosity at all. Okay. It's just he's working on his own stuff.
Right.
He's still excited about VR. Mm-hmm. If things intersect, with his AI and VR and blah blah blah, then he might work on something. But he's not really like into games.
Right.
creation anymore. So, and I am. So, that's not something that he's super excited about. He doesn't need to be. I mean,
Sure, of course. Yeah, yeah. Understood.
So it's fine. Yeah. I mean, so yeah, whenever we communicate, it's just like, hey, what do you think about this thing? And it's like, yeah, I'm not interested because blah, 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 or whatever. Cause sometimes things will come up.
Got it. Okay.
But we still will kind of say stuff back and forth. I talked to the other people that did a lot more,
Right.
Adrian and Tom.
I was gonna say you and Tom Hall, at least as I remember, are still pretty tight, correct?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
definitely. Yeah, he'll be coming over here.
Oh, he's moving to Ireland.
No, he's just going to visit.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, oh, interesting. I want to go back briefly to you were talking about sort of the pounding the pavement, trying to, it's always hard to get money to raise money for games and make new games and things. Have you found, and you're like, you're only as good as your last game, blah, blah, blah. And obviously there's a lot of truth to that. What is your take on ageism? Have you found, like, because you're John Romero, has that not really come into your world, or do you notice that, or you haven't really picked up on any of that as someone out there trying to run a company and get people to give you money for your vision?
I think so. I think it's like you can't really get away from it. I think if you've done something, and this is like, it's almost like if you do a big game, they don't care how old you are.
Right.
Right. If you just did it, it doesn't matter how old you are. You just did it. Right. We want you to do it again. But if you haven't in a while, then sure, it can play into it. It can play into just like, but your last hit was X 10 years ago kind of thing.
Right. So it's not necessarily ageism. It's just more practically, we want to roll the dice with someone who's making hits.
Successism. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, that makes sense to me.
After Ravenwood, we basically started a company like the month after we launched Ravenwood,
right,
and got 4 games signed up with 4 different publishers like within months afterwards
because of Ravenwood.
Because of Ravenwood, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, if you do something successful, you will, people will want to be part of that.
Right.
But if you haven't done anything in a long time, then they can bring the whole like, well, you're kind of, they have never said anything about like, oh, you're old or anything like that.
Right.
But it's like your last game. Like, what was your last game, or 2 games ago or something like that?
Shooters, and not even shooters, but games in general. I mean, I assume I know you do, because you guys were, at least the last time we talked, you guys were talking about shit that I'm like, I don't know what game you're referring to. My palette has gotten much richer since I've become as much of a PC gamer as I am a console gamer for the last 4 or 5 years. I'm always delighted by the variety that you can find on PC. And when I hear a lot of people talking about, oh, games aren't creative anymore, I'm like, dude, if you're just playing console, you'll never know. Maybe you have a point, but no, there's some crazy, amazing stuff happening out there. But, when you look at the state of games now, and I'm assuming you're still playing a lot of games as a fan, there's so much. It's changed in so many ways about what's expected. Like, I read an article you did about I don't know how they frame. I know how they framed it. I don't know if this was the right take on it. But like the problem with modern shooters or something is sort of.
Oh yeah, John thinks modern shooters are crap.
Or something like, yeah. But as a designer, I was reading it going, yeah, he's absolutely right. Like as obsessively wonderful as Call of Duty Modern Warfare was, the minute you start throwing in the Pavlovian, I have to unlock things because that's sort of the meta is taking over the moment to moment. The moment to moment was never as rich and has never been as rich. But as somebody who's still making games, are you having to consciously go, the audience has changed in terms of what they expect, even though it sounds like from you as a designer, you would rather be designing at a more pure level. But it's almost like medicine for a lot of people these days. If you say, like, the last game I did, which was a total failure, it was 4 players, and everyone's like, it would have been better if there was 20 players. And I'm like, well, no, it was 4, because, I wanted you to be able to read tactics, whatever. It didn't work, but whatever.
Yeah.
But there's such an observation on the part of the customer about what a game is now, and sometimes that seems to run so opposite design philosophy of what a good game is. When you're designing for modern audiences, how do you square that now?
Well, there are, and if you look at any games that are really popular, there are specific um, design decisions that people are really turned on by, like right now. And a lot of times that's not like really new stuff. It's just a twist on something that's happened already. Like Battle Royale is still deathmatch.
Right.
It's
It's
just now there's
last, yeah.
100 people,
Right.
and it's a big space because I think that the thing about Battle Royale is it's not Counter-Strike, right? Counter-Strike is so close and tight that as soon as you spawn, you're dead and you don't have a chance to actually get good at the game if you've never played the game.
Right.
But if you play a Battle Royale shooter and you spawn in or you fall, parachute drop in, you have time to collect things and you get gameplay,
Right.
and you can start sitting there trying to snipe people, and then the wall closes, the circle closes, and then you better get up and run, and then pew,
Right.
and so it's like it's a different feel because these simple rules were put on this tried and true formula. The feel changed, and everything changed just with a little bit of design modification to normal deathmatch. And so I think people like the refresh of what deathmatch is about, but with these new extra simple rules. They're not difficult, they're very simple, and that to them it feels like a resurgence of something that they've loved already. So if you can like slightly modify the thing that people are loving doing, then you still got them. You're still timely, you're still doing something that is current versus shipping a game with the old school rules that's not paying attention to anything that people are playing right now.
Right.
So and whenever I try to design new stuff, it's always like, what is the next thing? Not like what is the thing now, but what is the next step of that thing? Like what would people actually want to do, or what are people doing right now that nobody's addressing? Like that's really important. So,
Well,
so
people. Oh, go, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
it's always about just like always pay attention to what people are into. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to sell your game.
Right.
Because other people are going to pay for it, and they do market research.
Right.
So you definitely got to make sure that you're hitting all of the hot points that are actually making money right now. Like they want to know that you are doing the things that would make money that are working now. And if you can predict that this new thing will actually be hot, because of this, all of these reasons, then they want to, maybe they'll want to kind of get behind it.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to your state, I think, of, I'm not even joking, it sounds like a joke, but it goes back to your state of mental health. Because I was always so stubborn. I was always so, but this is better gameplay. But the audience doesn't care. And it's like the audience is like, I don't give a fuck about your better gameplay. I want a lot of people on the screen to shoot at. And I didn't listen. And the minute I stopped listening was the minute my game stopped selling, because I got really into design, and I was like, this will be good for you. You just don't know it. And there's that fine line, right, between being a visionary who can see something no one else sees yet, and being a stubborn asshole who's not reading the market. I mean, do you struggle with that, or you're like, no, dude, I just read the fucking market? I mean, what are you a slave to more? Like if you're going to make a new game, how much is your personal North Star going to dominate your day-to-day creative decisions versus, yeah, but the market's really into this? Like, is that a struggle for you or not really?
Not really, because like the core of a really good shooter has always remained the same, I think, to me. And it's the second to second gameplay.
Mm-hmm.
Needs to feel solid. You feel like you have skill, that when you move, you have a response in the game that feels like it's actually doing what you want it to do.
Yeah.
And the player feels like they have agency. They when they shoot, it happens. Cool moves. Like if you're gonna try and jump and make a jump to the edge, if it helps you up, like in Doom,
Mm-hmm.
like Doom Eternal in 2016, it's
Mm-hmm.
like, this game wants me to win, but it's hard. It's like you give the player all all you can to let them feel like like if anything happens, it's their fault. Like it's not the game hamstringing them.
Right.
So at least for a shooter, you need to like do as much as you can to make the player feel powerful, and then give them a really fun place to do that in, with lots of really cool stuff. Like, let me do this cool action that this second to second feels really good. What am I doing that to? And that is the rest of the game. Like,
Right.
what are the other rules that you're going to put in there? And so like the core has to be really great movement, and it depends. Like the game that you're trying to make, that core will feel different. Like if you're trying to make a mil sim or a tactical shooter, that core is going to feel a little bit different because you're trying to be realistic. So you're going to be a little slower with your animation and your loading and reloading, and
Right.
all that stuff is gonna be like, is gonna slow it down. People completely understand it and they want it because that's realistic. But if you want to make something like, say, Doom, you go for speed, and you go for like what is the attitude, like the violence attitude, or like glory kills and all that stuff. So you know I think that's one of the reasons why 2016 did such a great job with the redesign of the
Yeah.
game, is just the attitude of the original brought to today, and then adding like, who doesn't want to crush some demon skull
Yeah.
and
No,
like
it's great. It was,
immediately,
yeah.
right?
The new one is great, but it's way too fucking hard for me. I couldn't hang with it. But so a lot of people will come to you and they say, we want, I mean, like you mentioned, boomer shooters. I love boomer shooters. I still play them a lot. They're some of my favorites. But so if you were to ever get back into shooters, a lot of people are like, make a arena shooter or this, that, or the other. I mean, are those, is that subgenre of shooter, have you allowed yourself to sort of move on from a standpoint of that was then, and if you were to make a shooter today, it would feel a lot more modern? Or do you think it would feel like Sigil, I think, is giving people what they've been asking for? But is that a relevant commercial product if you were to make a brand new game? Or that's not really where you want to be anymore? You want to play with the modern sensibilities?
Yeah, so it depends on what I want to make, and it depends on opportunity. So Sigil is definitely, it's funny because it's not a retro shooter because it's already based on an old game, and it's just new levels,
Right,
you
right,
know.
right, right.
So it's like the gameplay that people understand already, but with a little bit of extra design that could have existed in the original game, but we just didn't do it. You know
Right.
what I mean? So Sigil doesn't have any extra code. It's using all of the rules of Doom. It uses the source ports that are not modified. So it's like, what did we have in the original Doom? And then how can I take what we had and use some rarely used triggers and sprites to create a new thing that I can put in all of the levels, and teach people that this is a thing to pay attention to and to make sure that you're shooting this thing.
Yeah.
And so that was like a new thing. It was a new thing for Doom, and it made Sigil. I think it just kind of raised the quality bar of Sigil a little higher, just because it's like, here's some new design that anyone could have done. In the deathmatch levels, I did new design that had not been done in deathmatch levels.
Right.
And so it was like, to me, it's always like, this is a challenge. I love design challenges. How can I take the thing I made and do something new with it that after 25 years people haven't done? That's hard to do because
Right.
thousands of levels have been done,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it was really fun to do that, and that's what I felt like doing because it was the 25th anniversary, and people are, some people, the first bad review of Sigil was based on the person wishing it was Doom 2. And
Right.
so like, I need to do a Sigil 2. Like, I need to do the Doom 2 of
Right.
Sigil. And I know that people want that. That is, to me, it's not a boomer shooter. It's its own class of
Right.
boomer thing.
Well, if
Um,
somebody came to you and said, "Here's $100 million for Romero Games. We want you to make another action game,"
yeah.
and you could do whatever the fuck you wanted with that money. Would it be more old school, or would it be more taking into account today's market? Like, what's your dream type
Oh, it
of?
would be a mixture. It would be things that people love already that they haven't gotten enough of,
Okay.
but with a lot of new stuff. Lots of the stuff that everybody expects out of a shooter, and new things that no one's seen
Okay.
a shooter do.
Okay.
you know, because that's important to move the genre forward.
What do you think about because I heard you talk about microtransactions and how you're a fan of microtransactions and loot boxes when it comes to cosmetics. And I am
Yeah.
I am as well. People it maybe I don't know what it is, but I mean I love baseball cards, I love movie cards, I love the little mini figures that you open, you know. But I know a
Yeah.
lot of people don't like them. Blah blah blah. I agreed with you 100% that if it affects gameplay, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, are you out of your
Pay to
mind?
win is not the
Right.
way to win.
But what
Yeah.
about the fact, though, that we do still have, we don't have pay to win, but we do have what has become acceptable in design in competitive games is sort of pay to win with your time. Like, to me, it almost seems as problematic that, okay, you're not giving me money to be better at Call of Duty, but if you've been playing for a good long time, you've got better stuff. And it's almost like that seems again, that runs counter to my own design sensibilities. It would be like, oh, you've been playing chess for 3 years. You have the queen that has the sniper rifle. I'm like, no, that's an absurd thing, but that is expected, right? I mean, at a pure design level, is that you're like, fuck it, that's a problem. That's a fun, creative challenge to work around, or how does that sit with you?
So it's interesting. To me, I think World of Warcraft really solved this problem the best way possible. Um, there are people that are at the highest level of the game that don't care if you buy, gold online all day long in the game, because for 100 levels plus, well, now that they've redone the levels, but let's pretend it's back in the day where they had 120 levels.
Mm-hmm.
For the first 110 levels, you can buy as much gold as you want offline, use it to get up as fast as possible because you're buying stuff out of the auction house that's insane, legendaries or just epics, really powerful epics, to just like move up really quickly. Or you just like doing that. Some people, I mean, they even put the ability to just like start at max or start at like 10 levels before max. But when you reach max level, none of that gold means anything anymore. So it's not, it's like cheating happens on the lower levels. It doesn't actually happen at the highest level. There's no way to cheat at the highest level. At the lowest levels, you can buy all of the external gold, dump it in the game, make your character get all this really cool,
But most of
gear.
it's, I know there's like arenas, but most of it's PvE, right? But if you were doing that in a PvP game, I think, wouldn't you turn off a lot of people who were just trying to get into the game and enjoy it as a game?
You would, but if you're at the top level, if they stratified it at a point where the only way that you can get stuff is not through gold, but through earning that, like earning those items in the game.
Right,
So you would get, like, if you won an arena match and you got a specific token that was a currency,
right.
that you get like 10 of these and you can buy this crazy thing. And it's only through playing and being good in having good gear that you would actually win these matches to buy better gear, which is what happens at the top of raids. Like when you're at raid level and you're doing a raid, the gear that you get can't be bought ever, like in any
Right.
store. It only exists as a loot
So
drop from
it's
those
already
bosses,
tied to
right?
your skill, is what you're saying, right?
It's tied. It's, yeah, and none of that gold from before
Right.
affects anything except for like buying consumables or whatever that you're gonna pop before you go in to do your raid or your arena.
Would
So
you
like,
agree that making a boomer shooter I mean, if you were trying to make a successful shooter these days, you really have to have the meta of the leveling up and the unlocks and all that, right? I mean, that's just so expected that to not have that would, unless you are doing like a New Blood game, which I think they make amazing games. I love that publisher, but would you agree that that's just, you can't really do that anymore?
I think you can have the option to let the player choose to have that or not.
Okay.
So, because some people are turned off by looter shooters, but if they can get an experience that is great,
Right.
a super great shooter experience that still lets them be competitive or whatever the game's about,
Right.
and turn on loot if they feel like just like hitting every single chest and getting the next level or whatever of the thing and just like slamming through boxes, um, giving them the chance to turn that off and to make it just more hardcore or to just have the looter aspect. That's great if you can allow them to do that. That's what Ghost Recon Breakpoint did.
Right.
You know, they were a complete looter shooter that had microtrans, and people were pissed off. And then they put in the immersive mode that turned all of it off.
Right. Right.
And you know, and it was still amazing. You know, but there are parts of the game where you still have to turn the looter stuff back on because you have to be at a certain level to get into raids.
Okay.
And so you have to turn it back on to get in the raids, but then when you get out of the raids, you can turn it back to fully immersive mode.
Well, I'll say that's one of the things that impressed me most. There's a lot of things, but when we had dinner, you and Brenda were just like encyclopedias of not just old games, but I mean, are you still finding the time and making the time to game often? Like, it seems like you really are still very current with what's happening out there. Is that fair to say?
Well, there's so many games out there that the way that I learn about them is by watching videos, reading about them. You know, if they're really good, I'm going to watch a video immediately just
Right.
to see. Like, if it's a story-based game that looks interesting, I don't want to watch the video.
Right.
And it's interesting that I think Persona 5 has something in it where it tells people, if you're streaming this, stop here. Like, don't go beyond this point, because any game that's narrative is destroyed by streamers.
Sure.
Right? Because it gives the whole thing away. But if they respect that boundary and don't go beyond that point, then there's a reason to still buy Persona 5 or
Right.
whatever, right? But watching games is definitely, because there's so many of them, right? And really indie games are where the really great ideas come from.
I was going to
you know?
ask you, I'm going to name 3 games. Just tell me if you've played these. You have to have played Dusk, correct?
I played some of Dusk. I didn't get to go through all of it.
Right.
But yeah, love it.
Dusk was amazing.
Yeah.
Did you play Ultra Kill?
No, I haven't even heard of Ultra Kill.
Please, for the love of God, John Romero,
Okay.
get Ultra Kill. Seriously, write it down. I'm going to send you a copy. In fact, give me your. I'm going to send you. I can get my own copy, Jeffy. But yeah, Ultra Kill was my game of the year last year. It is a first-person shooter.
Oh.
It is like a blend of Devil May Cry meets Quake.
Okay.
But not with swords, but just in terms of sort of that motion. And then you have to try this. It is a demo that was just on Steam the other day for their next series called Severed Steel. And it is. Please, for the love of God, Jonathan, look. It is so important to play this game. It is like, it's the first time I've ever played a first-person shooter where they have actually captured that sort of 80s, early 90s John Woo, Matrix, running on walls, sliding, slowing down time. It feels, I've never played a shooter like it, and it is absolutely delightful. So Severed Steel and Ultra Kill, I highly recommend.
Is Severed Steel on Steam?
It's on Steam. I don't know if the demo is still available, but you're John fucking Romero, so if you want, I'll write the guy and say, could you please
Gaben? No.
send John Romero a copy. But yeah, it's quite phenomenal. But you're right. That's where the juice is right now. It's, Call of Duty's great, but if you want to see state of the art shooters, that's kind of where you have to go.
Did you say Shattered Steel?
I think it's Severed Steel. It's kind of a terrible name. It's a terrible name for a video game.
There it is. Yeah.
Terrible box art. It's got the woman.
The actual game.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. It's phenomenal. It's just.
Have you tried Rainbow Six Siege?
I have. It's too hardcore for me. Like it's that same problem you're talking about with Counter-Strike, which is like, hey, I'm ready. I'm dead.
It is. Yeah.
No, I'm not playing this motherfucker. I don't.
Well, the funny thing is that you do actually have a little bit of time because you're in your team. When you go in, you do have a little bit of time before that happens. But like the really cool, like when you're going to go down on a rope, going down through a skylight. The control that you have, I've never seen that before in a game. Like, it's amazing how you move on the line. Of course, it's limited by, control, but it's amazing.
I know I'm trying to think what was the first one. I think it was Rainbow Six Vegas, where you could go down on the rope and hang upside down and shoot through the windows and shit, that's the first time I saw it, which was amazing. I just had a brilliant idea. It's a brilliant idea, John. You and me and Cliff Blazinski and one other guy that we have to pick will do a live stream where we'll just go into shooters and game and trash talk people, and any super chat goes to charity. And we would just a bunch of old fucks trying to hang in Rainbow Six Siege. It would be awesome. People would be like, what?
That would be a fun team.
It would be. We would be
I
horrible.
like Rainbow Six Siege. I
okay,
like it.
You would not like playing with me. You're like,
Yeah.
Jeffy, you're not supposed to act like one of the hostages. You're on our team. I'm like, I don't,
Yeah.
But
Get
anyway.
up off the floor.
That's right. It's scary.
It was so funny. I was playing it the other day.
Yeah.
And I got into a position. This is still like being new on one of the levels I hadn't played much.
Right.
And so I was in this one position where I was kind of up against the wall and I saw 2 doors and I'm by myself. So I'm going to like shoot whoever. I've already set up the doors to blow up when they try and walk through it and all this shit. I've already, barricaded and everything. And what happens is I get blown across the room into a wall because someone came up behind me and put a charge on the wall where my back was and blew the wall apart. It was so funny. I was just laughing. It was awesome.
Do they know you're John Romero when you play, or like, that's fucking John Romero, or you're like Spanky X342 or something?
No, yeah, it's unless I'm playing deathmatch on my own Discord where people want to play like Doom or whatever deathmatch 1-on-1 kind of stuff, then they know.
Okay.
But if I'm in online or whatever, it's just anonymous.
All right, I have 2 more retro questions, and let's move to Empire if you're cool with that.
Yeah.
I couldn't find this online, but I kind of could, but I kind of couldn't. Why in the world do I have it in my brain that you worked on Time Pilot 84?
I didn't.
You
didn't. I played it.
I don't know why.
Oh, I played the hell out of it. It was great.
That was out there somewhere, and I'm like, I don't think John Romero worked on 84. I think that was made in Japan, and okay.
Yep, it was.
All right, good to know.
It was.
Okay.
Good game though. I played the hell out of it.
I loved the first one more, but that was I think I told you this at dinner, but that was the first moment I realized, like, kind of like you were talking about looking at Carmack's work or any of these programmers' work and going, I can recognize just from the screen who programmed that, or that there's like there's a sign of that coder. If you play, I wasn't surprised, but I was delighted to learn that Time Pilot and Gyrus were both made by the same programmer. And they both they both put you in that sense of Zen-like trance, which I was like, oh, it totally makes sense. It was the same guy, that you could see their spirit in the code, in the physics, and it's bizarre.
I love Gyrus. I remember the first time I saw Gyrus, I was in Nice in France in 1985. And there was an arcade. They had Astron Belt there.
Okay.
And they had Firefox.
Astron Belt was the FMV game, right? Oh,
yeah. So it was Firefox.
So much money on that. People are like, what is that? It's basically was like shitty real life models of a little spaceship going through space.
Like it's like AR now, right?
Yeah, but back then you were like, I'm playing Star Wars, and it was delightful, man.
It was great. And I remember seeing Gyrus, and I was like, whoa, this is great.
Yeah,
love this game.
Yes,
absolutely. I basically spent all my money on Gyrus when I was in Nice.
Well, it was that whole getting to Earth, right? It was that little dangling the carrot in front of you. It's like, oh shit, I'm 4 planets away. I got to keep going.
Yeah.
All right, last retro question, and I'm sure you've talked about this before, but the reason it sits with me is my brother, who, believe it or not, is more progressive than I am, which I didn't know was possible. But, he asked me ages ago when I think God of War had come out or something, and he was talking about violence in video games. And I was like, well, they've done all these studies. There's no real evidence of that, blah, blah, blah. He's like, yeah, but you're putting, and he wasn't like opposed to God of War, but he was questioning. He's like, but you're putting this out into the culture. And he's like, I know you as a gamer and a designer, Ralph Koster in his Theory of Fun book, I don't know if you've read it, great fucking book.
Oh, yeah, of course.
But he talks about how, people who don't play games look at Grand Theft Auto and they see a prostitute that you're banging and that's what they see. But he's like, if you're really into the game, you see a power-up. Like it's a metaphor. It's not really real, right? But he was saying to me, it's like, all that may be true, but if you knew you were putting something into the zeitgeist that was harmful, would you stop doing it, right? And I was like, I don't remember what I said. Probably I came up with well, there's no proof of that. Who the fuck knows what I said? But obviously, when you look at Columbine and you look at the fact that Doom is associated forevermore with those guys, Doom always is also associated with joy and all these people who wait 3 hours in line for you and say, I played with my dad, I played with my brother, this was formative for me. And I guess, I mean, I assume that's the answer, but do you ever think about that negative part of the legacy, or is it like that's really not, and I don't mean this like dismissive because I know you're not this kind of guy, but when you know, that's not your problem. And I don't mean that like you're like, who gives a shit, but in terms of you can't be responsible for every move you make because you couldn't get out of bed in the morning. I mean, how do you ever think about that or not really?
Well, yeah, the funny thing, there's a lot of people that, I mean, how many millions of people have played the game,
Right.
you know?
Exactly.
And it's well known that those kids were disturbed, and it wasn't because of Doom. They loved it. They
Right.
loved Doom, and Doom is about killing demons. It's
Right.
not about killing people. So yeah, I never looked at it as, oh, that's the cause. It was just
Right.
like, hey, they love that game just like everybody else loved it,
Right.
and that's not the reason why that happened.
That's how
Um,
I would agree with that. I mean, I think the joy it brought, because I mean, if you look at,
so much fun.
yeah.
It was the most fun that like at that time there was nothing that I'd ever played that was more fun than that game.
What about
You
the
know,
fact? Is it bullshit, or do you look back? Like, one of the things I remember reading about was around the Quake time, you got a lot of shit in the press about, well, Romero's not working much anymore, and it sound he's death matching all day long. Do you remember this? I have to assume you
that
remember.
was only in Masters of Doom.
I saw it in an article, but maybe they
Oh,
were
I'd
referencing.
love to read that article.
Okay,
It
okay.
had to have, they were
They
referencing
might have
Masters
been
of Doom because that's
okay,
the only
okay.
place that
So
happened.
was that like, no, go fuck yourself? That never, or because part of me now that I hear your story of like, yeah, man, because I had 4 months where it was all tech, and I wanted to design. What did you want me to do? I mean, what was?
Well, yeah, that was so. It was pretty great when Doom came out because 1984, 84, 94, 1994 was like the year of Doom, and we were making Doom 2 at that time.
Okay.
And when we put Deathmatch into Doom, it was at the very end of the game, right? Of
Uh-huh.
development. It wasn't at the beginning like you
Hmm.
would expect, like
No. Yeah.
everybody knows you should do, right?
Twisted Metal had its death match put in by a programmer on a weekend, like three weeks into alpha. He's like, maybe we should have death match. Okay, try it, and it was like, and that became it. I mean, yeah.
So yeah, so there was definitely that, right? That was in there, and we needed to test a bunch of levels. So of course we would play deathmatch, but the amount of things that were going on at that time, uh, I was the only person dealing with community stuff. Like it was really important that we were in touch with the community, and being in touch with the community is the reason why Final Doom exists. Like I'm the one who found Team TNT before they released their mod,
Right.
and got that into a product. And Plutonia was, I think, Jay Wilbur finding that out because it's like, well, if we got this thing, we can get this other thing and make a really great collection for people. So at the company, we're a very small company, and there's development, and then there's like two other people.
Okay. Okay.
There's the small team that made Doom, which was 6 people, and then there's Jay and Donna, so 2 extra people. There's
Okay.
only 8 people in the company. Oh, then there was Sean and American, so there were 10 people.
Okay.
And actually, Sean and American helped do level design in Doom 2 because we had so many levels, and they were excited like everybody else to make stuff. So it was a small dev team, but there were a lot of other things going on. Like Heretic was in production, so I was the one who put the whole Heretic deal together. I was the executive producer. I was also designing. I was doing audio direction. I was naming every item in the game. You name it, like
Right.
that was my that was my game directed, and Raven was creating it. And I mean, I flew there. I set up every computer. I taught them how to code with
Right.
our engine. I taught them how to level design. So that was an intense
So
project.
just an unfair assessment, then, you think somebody just?
Yeah, because there was I mean, the amount of incomings, because Doom was the biggest game,
Oh
right?
yeah.
So uh, interviews, journalists, um, hint guides, books on how to make Doom levels, you name it. The amount of stuff that was coming out, we needed to, like, we were licensing the image of the game to certain companies. We were having to do a bunch of that, and also just like to keep the dev team from being bugged by journalists, I would have to do the interviews because I was the only one in the company that could talk about design, programming, art,
Right.
and biz stuff.
Right.
So I was the one that could do that stuff. We didn't have other people that could do it. Otherwise, that would have been great to hire somebody that could just like answer the question. Jay did a really good job, handling a lot of interviews,
Right.
but they want to know more. And so, sometimes, I would have to do those things. So there was so much going on in 1994, and we made Doom 2 in 8 months. And during that time was Heretic and all of the licensing, the community stuff. And then we start talking about Quake, at the end of 94. And we're licensing our engine. And like, there's so much going on with
Right.
a small company of people. I couldn't deathmatch all day long or nothing else would get done because
Right.
our external projects, I was the one who did those.
Right.
And then 1995 is like, and now it's Hexen and it's Quake, and I'm writing the level editor for Quake so the team can start making levels. I'm still doing hint guides, Prima books,
Right. Yeah.
community stuff, you name it. It's
Right.
a ton of shit. And on top of that, Strife was being created down the hall, so we had to move those people over.
Does that
Doom
then
16.
it just rolls off your back then? Just kind of like, yeah, people are going to say shit, fuck it, move
Yeah.
on with your day. You don't worry about it.
Yeah, pretty much, because it's like, well, here are all the things that were happening. I had to do all this stuff. It takes a while. We're doing the ultimate Doom. Doom 64 is happening across the hallway. You name it, it was happening.
How did you deal with all the animosity that came your way after all of that? With Ion and all that. I mean, was it like, because you seem so focused on the work, it's almost like the image I have that I'm beginning to get in my head of you is this shit was happening outside your window like a thunderstorm, but you're like, great, I'm focused on how do I make this fun. And I mean,
Yeah.
is that a real read? Is that an accurate read?
That basically, yeah, basically. So, during id, it was just like amazingly positive.
Right.
People who say, "Oh, how did you deal with any animosity because of Christian groups or whatever?" Didn't care. Like, we absolutely spent no time on that.
Right.
Like, we knew it was a great game. People were responding. It was doing unbelievably well. That says everything.
See, I'll drive over to the church in my Ferrari and I'll drop off some fucking wafers. Go fuck off.
What's funny is just like, but we're killing demons.
Oh, I
like,
know.
why don't you like that?
That's
Like,
right.
why are you getting upset?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
So it was really funny. But during Ion Storm, just because of the hype of Ion,
Yeah.
and what was happening there, then people could turn against us because marketing backfires and image ads for the company when we didn't have games and all of these things that were, part of not part of my dev team, not part of Tom's dev team or Warren's or whatever. It was just like, we have a lot of other people that have to do stuff during the day, while we're making games, and
Right.
and that was part of what they did. So, when other things were happening at Ion, basically caused by my co-founders, all these issues, that's when people in the company were basically pissed and were talking, and all these sites popped up around it. So BitchX, Evil Avatar, Fat Babies, Old Man Murray, they all started, and they were reporting Ion Storm shit from within.
Right.
And so that was crappy. I would get pissed because, like, oh, more shit, somebody's talking, but I knew it wasn't on my team because, like, we're really tight and we're working to get the game done.
Right.
And I'm not seeing them on forums all day long. So, like, we're trying to make Daikatana at that time. But for me, it didn't really affect me that much, just because, like, hey, IDOS is standing behind me. We're trying to make this game great. And that's the focus. That's the whole focus. That's what they want us to focus on. That's what I'm focused on. I don't care about all the PR writing crap. Like, this negativity is going to sell, and people are pouring out crap, and so what are you going to do?
You need after you're done with games, you need to become a therapist for game developers, because it's really you have such a good outlook on this that so many of us are still just like, oh, you fuckers, we hate you, you're so mean.
There's a lot of people calling me all kinds of names online,
Yeah, but
back then, but not now.
Well, that's true now. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Um, God damn it, John. I was going to ask you something. I lost my train of thought. That sound cue. That sound cue, which I love. Oh, right. So I'm assuming you've met Miyamoto a number of times. Did he know that Hero was named after him? Did he was that ever on his radar? Or
I've never met him.
you've never met him?
No, I know. It's crazy. He's
Oh,
probably, I mean, really, I haven't met that many Japanese game developers. There's so many amazing
oh my
Japanese game
goodness. Oh
developers,
yeah.
but like, I just haven't met them, unfortunately.
Gotcha. Okay.
But
Okay.
man, there's a lot of them I'd love to meet.
There was a very small group of people who knew what you were referencing, and it was like, that's so fucking cool. You get to play Miyamoto. So,
Yeah.
okay, gotcha. Real quick, there's a guy in the chat, one of our longtime guys. He's phenomenal. A guy named Jojo D. He wanted me to ask you, but I want to ask as well, because, Doom and Quake and all that, and it sounds like Ion Storm. I don't know about Empire. Notorious for the amount of, 8 months crunch, living at the office, all of that stuff.
hmm
Where's your take on crunch today, especially as a guy who owns a company and manages? I mean, I come at it from the standpoint of people should be rewarded for it. They should know what they're getting into, but you can't really make great stuff if you don't throw your heart and soul into it. And as long as the company's honest about it and there's a reward at the end of the rainbow, I think it's okay and I think it's necessary. But a lot of people will disagree with me on that and say it's it's exploiting people, it's bad, it's rude, it's wrong. Where do you come down on it these days?
So the funny thing is, like, anytime that I have done like crunch mode type stuff, it's always because I've wanted to. It's like this is really fun. This, like, the thing that I'm doing right now is so fun. I don't want to stop. I want to get it finished. There's only been 2 times that I did crunch that just had to get done.
Okay.
And it's funny because it's like I own the company both times, so it's like one was during Quake. We did 7 months of crunch, which is 7 days of, every day, weekends, you name it,
Right.
for 7 months until that game was launched. That's why we're in that room. And then, like,
But
even on
you're
top
saying
of
you
that,
all wanted to be there in that room.
well, we wanted to get the John Carmack wanted us in that room, and it made sense because he spent a year getting this engine done. And to get the game done quickly, the only way to do it is to almost like game jam it, right?
Right.
For as long as it's going to take. In a game jam, everybody's together. And, like, let's do that with the company. But it didn't work like a game jam where everyone's really happy and positive and fun. It was like they're burned out and they don't appreciate this crunch now.
Right.
So they don't appreciate, they're burnt out and they don't appreciate game jam for 7 months. But like, we all knew, like, we knew we were making a great game. We knew that it was going to take an extra effort to make this thing from a team that's burnt out. Like, if we didn't continue, like, when I mean by burnt out is, like, before we started crunch mode, they weren't working crazy hours, right?
Okay.
It's just they were working a year on stuff that could not be part of a game because of the experimental nature of everything. So it's like they're mentally burnt out, not because of hours, but because of, like, I've spent a year not making stuff that was actually going to ship. Okay, and then so we knew that the hours was the thing that was going to, like, it's what we needed to do to get this game shipped.
Right.
And it was really hard. It was an intense crunch mode for 7 months back then.
How many of you guys were doing that?
All of us.
But
everyone.
how many? The reason I'm asking is,
There was 10.
so did everybody
10 of us?
stand to benefit, like, meaningfully financially from that? And so there was a reward at the end? Because I'm gonna cut these guys off at the pass. I can hear them saying, "Yeah, but if you're on Assassin's Creed Odyssey and you're not gonna get any Ferraris from it, right? I mean, because that's
Yeah.
But you guys all benefited, right?
Well, the thing is, like, I didn't. I got nothing from Quake. You know,
Really?
yeah, when I left the
Oh,
company, I
because you
was done.
left. You left. Okay,
I
right.
left, and I get no profit from Quake.
Gotcha.
So, but it was to make a great game, and the people. So we were kind of unique as a company that at that time, we're talking the mid '90s, everybody was making 100K.
Yeah.
Everyone made the same amount of money, which was a lot of money back then
Yeah.
for anybody in the game industry.
And
So
in Texas too. I mean, right? I mean,
yeah, Texas. So everybody was already making good money. They had a really good job, and they're making the best game. Like, what else? What do
right.
you complain about?
Right.
you know. And so nobody complained about crunch mode. It was like we know that. I mean, it
You
was a
guys are
mission.
industry wide because I didn't hear about it back then. But
Yeah,
was that an industry thing? You think nobody was complaining, or just you
I
guys
don't
had?
think it was. I don't think it was. Maybe maybe some places did it, but the way that we did it was different because it was a mission for everybody.
Okay.
Like we know that we need to get this game done.
Have you
If
changed
any,
your views on Crunch? Like now that you have Romero and now that you've made Empire, is it the same or different? Like, did you guys crunch on Empire of
well,
Sin?
it's different. It's definitely different now. If we do any kind of crunchy type stuff, it's really voluntary. Um, like we know everyone knows what the deadlines are and that we need to get stuff done, and we have producers to reallocate time. Like if someone's taking too long to get something done and it's running over the next task, maybe another coder will pick that up.
Okay.
And so we manage all this time stuff really well, and as much as we can, we'll even rescope if we can, before any crunch would ever happen.
Right.
But really, we don't. It wouldn't be a crunch kind of thing. It's a voluntary, like personal responsibility thing where people will, if they ever get to a point where they're going to spend some more time, it's because they want to, because they want to get that thing done, because that would be a cool feature.
But if somebody
Um,
says, "Do you want Empire?" If somebody says, "Okay, I want to do," whenever you kill somebody, I want to do a kill shot, and it's going to take me 2 months to do a really cool kill shot effect, blah blah blah, and you put that on the thing, and then they come to you a month in and say, "Oh, it's going to take me 3 months." Is that something where that guy now is on the hook to get the feature done by hook or by crook in the 2 months, and he has to crunch, or is it like, okay, well, let's rescope, or is it case by case?
I'll definitely rescope. Like,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, as much as possible. We avoid anything like that. It's
Okay.
almost never happened at our company.
Okay.
It's like, hey, it's time to go home.
Right. Okay.
Time to go home. Don't work late. It's only if it's critical, like unbelievably critical, and for some reason someone couldn't do it, someone else picks it up. So if anyone is working late, it's just like there's a deadline and this person is going to get it done. So they know that they're going to have to stay late to get it done, then they'll do it. But it's not a crunch mode
Well, let me ask you this.
ever.
Okay, so just being straight up front about this, I mean, I played Empire Sin. I loved it. You know, I loved it. I rarely
Yeah.
even finish fucking games, and I'm going through my second playthrough now with Al Capone on a harder mode, which is very hard for me. I thought it was great, but I came to it late. But I know one of the criticisms it had when it launched was, some of the systems weren't there. It was buggy and things like that. Looking back now, if you would have been able to fix all of that and launch with a better score and a better reputation when it launched, what would you have crunched, or would you have said no? That's just how it goes. I mean, how do you square it now,
Oh, we
knowing?
would have wanted a different launch date, really.
Okay, so you wouldn't
You
have
know.
crunched even if you knew. If you could go back and
Mm-mm.
say the date doesn't move, right?
Yeah.
What changed
Yeah.
then between Quake and Doom in those days where you were willing to do it, and now that you're running a company and you're like, nope, it's time to go home? Like, what happened there?
I'd say, the journey is more important than the launch. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Getting to that launch point needs to be a really fun time, a time where people aren't getting burnt out or stressed out or anything.
Right. Gotcha. Okay. Fair.
So, there were times that we worked really hard, um, but we did work as hard as possible every day to minimize any time that we
Got
would
it.
have spent, working extra.
So on Empire, I mean, I'm assuming, I mean, because you guys are always talking new games and stuff. That one was the first big one out of the chute because you got funding for that one, and that's why that one came out first as your first big game, or what was that always a plan? Okay, so when that came out, like I said, I think that game got a lot of unwarranted negativity in the reviews. I thought it was a really good game. If I have one criticism, it might be that it was a little too easy in the combat on normal. Like, I was stunned how quick I was able to get through some of it, but I loved it. I felt very Jagged Alliance vibes, which I loved. Yeah. I fucking loved the combat in that game. When that game comes out and it lands like it did, and I've had a game, like my last game came out and it was a thud. It got worse reviews. I'm not saying your game was a thud, but it wasn't what I assume you guys were expecting. How do you rally the team? How do you keep the morale up? Because you guys you're continuing to work on it now. There's an expansion coming out. I mean, what is that? What was that like for you guys at a managerial level, running the company, when you come out with that response from the audience?
Well, Brenda does a really great job, directing the team, and she's always as positive as can be about things that could be improved, what our plans are to improve things over time. There has to be a really good release cadence, and to have a proper response to the community that lets them know we're listening to them,
okay,
and we're fixing things, and that's super important. And like that happens almost in real time on Discord, our Discord as well. So curating a group of the community that is vocal and is dedicated to be part of an exclusive group that can play and give us really good feedback, and just do these almost like early access type things in a runtime way, that just to basically like make sure that we are listening to everybody and we're responding to any issues that are in the game. And sometimes the response to issues in the game are some redesigns of some stuff, like we'll get rid of that because we're going to do this instead, and that'll take over from where that thing was.
What is the plan for Empire? Like, how are you guys going to be able to keep going for a while with it, or is it this expansion and then the doors close, or you don't know yet? Like, how long is this?
We'll still work on it. We can't say how long we're going to be working on it.
Okay.
But we're still working on it.
Okay.
Yeah, and we'll still continue work on it.
How did the Game Pass thing come about? Because, I mean, it never occurred to me to reach out to you. The minute I reached out, you're like, you want a code? I'm like, oh, I know, I already got it. But, I mean, Game Pass is one of those mystery things a lot of gamers don't quite understand. It's like, this is terrible for the industry, this, that, and the other. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I have to assume being on Game Pass for Empire of Sin was a really good thing. Is that correct?
It was great. It was great.
Why did you go on Game Pass, and why was it great?
Well, that was definitely Paradox's marketing team was working on all that. So we didn't actually decide to go there. They decided that was going to be a really great opportunity. And so we had to do a lot of work to make sure that we could, be on it. And when we got on Game Pass, the number of players went up crazily, like thousands of percent increase. It was huge. And it was awesome, because like so many people are playing the game now. And it came at a time when we had done tons, all the bug fixes that needed to be done.
Right.
And improvements to the game was at the perfect time for Game Pass to hit. And then people got to see something that was not what you had read about, on the initial launch, but was, what are they talking about? This stuff is fixed. This is great.
Right. Okay. So is that like, people say, yeah, but how do you make any money, or are you giving up sales? I mean, have you found that it affected sales in a positive way? Like, are you actually still selling copies, or you make enough off Game Pass that it doesn't really matter? Or because
that's really all Paradox's domain, because we're basically focused on development and they're focused on marketing.
Okay.
So they deal with all of that. However, those whatever those deals are, they're part of what Paradox does.
Got it. But they've been happy with the game, and you guys are happy with the game.
Yeah. I mean, it's the stuff that's coming is really cool.
I'm super excited. There's something about it's the combat and the world. I think. I mean, it's not the first game to do sort of 20s, 30s Chicago. And obviously it's isometric. I mean, there's games that go down into the streets, but there's something about just the ambiance of it that really makes you feel invested in, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the voice. You know what? Part of it is the fact that so much of it's real. Like when you wrote me, if people are watching, you're like, I don't know what you're talking about. There's a part in the game where there's a side mission. Oh, I know exactly one of the reasons I love it. But anyway, there's a side mission where a guy comes to you as the crime boss and says, hey, I want to go bring my friend back to life. And the guy's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, if we get a car battery and hook it up to this guy, it'll bring this guy back to life. And I remember tweeting like, I love this game, but it gets a little into some weird shit. And you're like, no, that really happened. That's a real story. Yeah. And then I started researching, and there's so much about that game, the guys you fight and stuff, that's actually real people. Yeah. And I was like, it was great, just great. And
there's a ton of research, tons of research.
Yeah.
And we continue to do a lot of research, by the way. So there's upcoming stuff, lots of really good research, especially the things that are weird like that. Like Daniel McKee Jackson.
That was the guy I played. I love that character.
Yeah, as a facade, like just having
a funeral director, right?
A funeral director, right? It came from his dad, really, when you read the background story. It's cool. Really cool.
Did you have to get rights to these people, or they're like public domain at this point? Like you don't have to go out to Al Capone.
Yeah, we didn't.
Okay.
No, we didn't. Didn't have to.
Okay.
Yeah.
John, we have a lot of people in the chat. Can we do some audience interaction?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you want to talk to John Romero, put yourself in the call-in waiting room. I'm going to hit through all the super chats real quick. Thank you guys for those. Very generous, very kind. Let me find the screen where that is, and we will get rolling on that. Here we go. Okay. Let me get all these here. Okay. We have.
I'm still muted. I'm muted on Discord.
Yes, stay muted on that for now. We'll talk here. Okay, right. So Johnny Mentology, thank you, buddy. He says, huge fan, John. How is Galway for you guys? I'm from Mayo myself.
Oh, wow. That's cool. That's not far.
That's Galway for people who don't know. You guys, what was the
Galway.
Galway.
Yeah.
What was the main impetus to pick up and leave America and go out to Ireland?
We spent 3 months in Ireland, going everywhere in the country, and we're just amazed at the community of people here, the game dev community, the people in general. It's the most beautiful country we've ever seen. And it had a spirit of that, like that early 80s spirit of the industry that was starting to happen, you know? And everybody here versus us being in Silicon Valley, where like, dog eat dog kind of environment. This was everybody trying to help everybody else do better. So Ireland as a whole has a great rep as a game dev, mecca.
Do you notice, I mean, as a guy who's, acutely politically aware and active, I mean, do you notice is it romanticizing places outside of America to say a place like Ireland seems kinder and less aggressive than America?
Absolutely, like massively. It is such a difference between the countries.
What do you attribute that to? What do you think what's the reason, or a big reason?
Culture, it's the culture.
It's
two totally different cultures.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay, so you're happy with the move.
Love it. Yeah.
Jojo D says, please ask John Romero if he ever crunched. We talked about this. Does he still crunch? Basically his thoughts on crunch. We covered that. Thank you, Joe. Res Pergu, thank you, buddy. He says, let's go, Mr. Dave. All right. Thank you very much. We will go. Ratchet says, you have taken over my day with this interview. Thank you for that. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Gaz says, looking sexy with the pipe, Jaffe. John and Jaffe, you are both legends. Thank you for everything. That's very kind. Thank you for that. Do you know you're John Romero? Like, your kids probably don't give a shit, right? They're just like, it's dad. I mean,
It's really funny, yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because sometimes things come up and they're like, I didn't know that. And it's like, there's a lot of stuff that you don't know.
Well, yeah. And the fun part is it's more they get impressed by people that know you. So, like, there's a guy on my Discord and on my chat sometimes, a guy named Hellbent. And I just know him because he's a Twisted Metal fan. And my kids came in one day and they saw his icon. They're like, you know who Hellbent is? I'm like, I don't know. He's this guy who plays Twisted Metal. They're like, no, he does voiceovers and all this shit. I'm like, I don't, it's fun. All right, let me bring in Joe. So we're going to mute on Zoom and we're going to kick into Discord.
Okay.
Okay, are you there?
Okay, I'm
All
on
right.
Discord now.
All right, I'm
Yep.
going to bring in Joe. This is Joe. Joe, you were talking to good sir John Romero. Joe, are you there?
Yes, I am here.
All right, you're
Hey,
on with
Joe.
John.
Was that?
You are on with Jonathan.
Oh, hi. John, when I was like 22, I was at the end of the college years, and a friend of mine bought Doom, and we went over there to play it, and it just
Oh.
blew our minds. Other people joined in. I made new friends. Some of them brought other friends.
Is he talking
And,
yet?
the
Oh,
end
you-
of the
you
story is
don't
this
hear him?
is
You
how
don't
I
hear him?
met my wife.
No.
Hang on,
Nope.
Joe. Hang on, Joe. He's not hearing you. 1 second, bud.
Let me. Oh, just a second. I'm just trying to. Interesting.
You're able to hear me over Discord, correct?
I can hear you, no problem, over Discord. Yeah.
Joe, he cannot.
Let me see
hear
if I
you.
can.
Why not?
Let me see. Is it something in that channel?
No, it may be if you go to your audio settings
Mhm.
it may be.
Yeah. My output device. It said, "Oh, I'm using the browser, so it cannot change the audio device." But I'm hearing you, which is interesting.
I have
Um,
my app open. Maybe that's why. Maybe I'm using the Discord app and not the browser.
My app is open. Well, my app's open, but I'm not on it. I'm in the browser. I
It
guess
may
I would
be
have
that
to
there's
switch
probably
over.
a conflict. It probably doesn't know which audio. That's what happens to me when I have them both open. Is it a problem to
Okay.
to go to the what's it called, the app?
The app is running. If you want, I can log out of
Yeah,
this.
log into the app, John. Let's just try that if you don't mind.
All right.
All right, thanks, man. All right, Joe, you're still there?
Yep.
All right.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you great. Yeah, I Discord, I love Discord, but Discord definitely has some user interface and user-friendly kind of audio challenges. This happens more often than it should.
Yeah.
Are you going to tell John Romero the story of you farting in
I
the
would
car,
need to
Joe? Is
know.
that the idea?
Your server.
No. This one's sweeter.
Okay, fair enough.
Add a server. Join a server. Do you have a Discord
Link?
join link?
Yes, I do.
You'd have to put it, if you put it in the chat in Zoom, then I could get it.
I'll give it to you right now.
I can't hear what you're saying
Oh,
since I'm only on Zoom.
yes, it's coming right now. Here you go.
Okay,
Okay.
there we are. That will get me in. Okay. All right.
Are you in?
Now I'm in there.
Okay, so let me mute here. Okay, can you hear us, John? Joe, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. John, can you hear us in there? Now I can't hear you. Oh my goodness gracious. Sorry. Are you? I'm back on Zoom for a second, John. Can you hear me on Zoom? You're on Zoom now? That's really strange. I can't hear you at all now, John. I see you. I'm on Discord. Now you're out of Discord and you're back in Zoom. Or you're muted on Zoom, just so you know. Can you?
I am muted on Zoom.
Okay, so what was going on when you were in the Discord waiting room?
Well, I'm not sure if I'm hearing you through Zoom or through Discord.
Okay, so when you were just in Discord, could you hear Joe?
No.
Okay, go ahead and put yourself in Discord. Let's not mute anything because there'll just be an echo for a moment. That's fine.
Okay. Now I'm sitting in Discord. Okay, I just clicked the waiting room.
Okay,
Call-in waiting room or
Nope,
call-in
you're,
show?
You're good. I'm putting you in there now. So now
I'm in the show now.
Perfect. Now there's an echo. So let's mute on this on Zoom.
I just
Okay.
muted Zoom.
All right, Joe, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
All right, can you?
I can hear Joe.
You can. There we go. Joe, take two. Action.
It was my fault because I was not in the call-in show channel on the app.
Maybe we should call John
Okay,
Carmack. Maybe he knows what's going on with the tech.
Yeah, he'll help.
Yeah. We should totally call. No. Okay, Joe, go.
Okay, when I was about 22, and a friend of mine had a copy of Doom, told me to go over to his place and start playing it, and it dominated our lives for a little bit. People started showing up. A lot of them I'm still friends with. Some of them had cousins and other friends that came with them. At the end of this story, I met my wife, and we have 2 kids. One of them just graduated, so I just wanted to say thank you, John.
All right, well, you're welcome, and I thought that was awesome. I'm still friends with people that I met during the Doom days, that were players. We met on Dwango, we met at LAN parties, we still talk, the game brought a lot of people together.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys listening heard it. It was very,
definitely.
it was a little sketchy on the audio, but Joe was saying that's how you met your wife, and now you've been married for a while and you have kids, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, Joe. Thank you, buddy. Thanks for everything, Joe. Appreciate it, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.
All right. Let's bring in a guy named Anari. Okay, Anari, you are talking to John Romero.
Okay. Hey, I just had one question about Daikatana. I don't know if you've been asked about this a million times, but if you could what do you think went wrong specifically on that game in that development cycle? And if you could make Daikatana again today, I guess what would you do differently? And do you think, what would you do differently? Yeah.
Let's see. I wouldn't redo the game, just because I have so many ideas that I just want to keep on making new things. There are a lot of people that really love Daikatana. It's still played multiplayer like every day in Germany. And there's been a dedicated team of modders that have improved the game and fixed the bugs that were in it for 1.3 community release. And it's just amazing that there's still a really dedicated group of people that love playing the game. What happened with the development of the game was just like, I think I was expecting id Software to happen again, and it didn't. And so it was even though I was using the engine, it's still a tough thing to make a game, and especially for a new company, and with the expectations that people had. It was just like a brand new game from a brand new company with a brand new team, and we still made the game in 18 months. Even though it took 3 years, I had to make the game twice.
And looking back at the mods and the changes people have made to the game, do you generally see it as a big improvement, or do you really do you feel like they were able to, I guess, expand on what you wanted for the game?
Yeah, I think that everything they've done is an improvement. It's funny because one of the things that I liked about the game was the save gem system. Like, you have to earn being able to save the game, and people hated it. And so they removed it. I wonder if we even did that for 1.2, but for sure they removed it in 1.3, and people love to save scum and like, go ahead. It's like, give people the opportunity to do that, and if they feel like it's cheating, then they won't do it themselves, even if it's sitting in front of them. It doesn't hurt anything. I do want people to get through the game, and if it's easier because they can save and load, then hell yeah, just do that. So I shouldn't have put the save gem system in there in the first place. But people have definitely improved it. They fixed the dumb loading issue where it was using the VBL during loading for some reason. It made no sense. But yeah, lots of little things got fixed, and the game is the best version of the original Daikatana, I think, that it could have been. And people had asked about redoing it or making a sequel and stuff, and I'm just past the point of doing that. Like, it would be hard to get anyone to fund a sequel or a remake of the game just because of the negative press that happened at that time. If all that negative press hadn't happened, it's probably something that somebody would be interested in funding. But it was kind of doomed at launch.
Yeah, I think I heard a lot of people still did enjoy it despite all the bad press. But anyway, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Nari.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks.
I actually thought the gym, again, this goes back to design. I liked it.
I know.
I thought it was neat because it was kind of like the typewriter ribbons in Resident Evil. It was like, it created more tension.
Yeah.
But again, I think you handle that better than I ever have, which is the gamer doesn't like it. I've always been like, I'm not a short order cook. I have a vision. And you're like, bitch, shut up. What do you want to eat? I'll make you whatever you want.
What do you want to eat?
Yeah, it's like, that's why you're John Romero and I'm not. When you were, let me ask you real quick before I bring in this next call. Did you know you were in for a bumpy ride? Like, did you know the game wasn't going to work? Like, when did that ever, like when we launched Drawn to Death, which was a total failure. And I remember like 2 days before it came out, we were sitting in the studio and we were all like guessing the Metacritic. And none of us were like, oh, it's going to be a 56. The worst case was like a 72. And I was like, I think if people really get it, it could be a 90, Did you know that you were in for a shellacking?
Oh, yeah.
Or, like, when did that?
Yeah,
when did you know that?
All those sites that sprung up starting in 1997 were focused on just the amount of negative press was just horrible. So we already knew, like, the only thing that could save the game is if it was a really great game, like to save it from the bad press. And we did work really hard on it. I mean, the deathmatch demo that we put out in early '98 was really cool. It was because it didn't have psychics in it. It was really cool, and people loved the new, air physics and everything that we put in, and so it felt like, hey, this might actually turn out good. But it was just at launch, it was already like people just they couldn't wait to write that review, and it did have bugs. I mean, there were issues that were ridiculous, and I think we probably even knew because it took 25 release candidates before we could actually make the master.
Right.
That's a lot of release candidates.
Do you think the reviews, though, do you think it's a good game or a bad game or just okay? Like, what do you think about it? Or is it like me with your kids? You can't think bad about it.
I think it's an okay game. I don't think it's a bad game. I think it's an okay game in that if some of the decisions, the stupid decisions, and some of the bugs were gone from the game at launch, that it would have been reviewed as, this isn't bad. This is fun. This is a fun event. I haven't played a shooter that had 4 different eras in it with new weapons and new monsters. It's like 4 games in one. Like, that is the best that I think would have happened, was that people were on this ride that they didn't expect to keep going on and changing as they went through it. That's what I wanted to do. I wasn't trying to make the best game in the world, but I was trying to provide a different experience for people who maybe subconsciously felt like, in Doom, I still see the same monsters at the end of the game as the first level. Like, why did they just take these monsters and roll them all over the levels and there it is, So I wanted to make a game where everything was new weapons, new monsters on every level as you went through it, and then you were taken to a completely different environment where it happened all over again, and it happened 4 times. And we did that.
Right. Wait, one last question about that, then I'll bring in this caller. When you were there, Deus Ex is happening in a different office, right? They're not in the skyscraper.
They're in Austin, yeah.
Were you watching that and aware that they were building what would become a classic, or you were just like, that wasn't even on your radar?
I didn't know that what they were. I didn't actually know the design particulars of Deus Ex as they were making it, but I trusted that Warren knew how to make a great game.
Okay.
Whatever it was that he was going to do, because there was so much happening in Dallas, I couldn't focus on what's going on down in Austin. I just trusted Warren.
Okay.
And his design sense and the people that he hired were good people, and that if he given enough time and given enough time and resources, that he could make something that was really good, and that's what I was hoping for, and he delivered more than anyone ever expected.
Gotcha.
You know,
Okay. Yeah.
so it was, yeah.
All right. This is Jimmy Gilchrist calling in. Jimmy, you are on with John Romero.
Hey, Mr. Romero, how are you doing, sir?
Great. How's it going, Jimmy?
When I'm playing the old Doom games, I kind of feel like I'm in a twisted version of Jurassic Park. Like it has its own ecosystem, its own environment. But when I play like the new Doom games, I don't feel that. It's kind of like from point A to point B. Like, what are your thoughts on the direction that the new Doom game has gone and first-person shooters in general have gone in?
Well, shooters have gone in every direction. I think from the very beginning ones, they've gone. They're all over, and I love that. I love the fact that the genre has so many subgenres and experimentation in so many different areas. It keeps it fresh. It keeps it up there at like the number 2 type of game that in sales. In the new Dooms, I think they've done such a good job, and it's funny because Doom Eternal is not a retread of 2016. Like they didn't just like add a shotgun and some new monsters like we did for Doom 2. They actually did a whole lot more experimentation in that game, and they still retained the same attitude and the speed and everything. And so I thought it was really great. You know, I think people, when they look back at the new Doom games, they'll recognize that they have their own feel. It's not the same feel as the original, but they have their own identity. Like that game's identity now has multiple identities now because of the distance, the time between the different versions of it. But that, like in its own right, it has succeeded in creating like a modern classic version of the game, and lots of people love it. Lots of people play it. Yeah, I think they did so much stuff in that game. There's so many aspects of the new Doom that are just really cool. So they still have a really great platform. I'm excited about the next one. Like I knew before Eternal came out that I would be really excited for it, but more excited about what's going to happen after it. Like what's beyond?
Why the next one? What have they announced what they're doing?
No, but because Doom 2016 was a Doom 1 and Doom Eternal is Doom 2.
Gotcha. Okay.
What is the next level? Because Doom 3 was a Doom 1, right?
Right. With a lot of flashlights, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly. It was like, what is after Eternal is the original brand new stuff.
That's right. Okay.
That's the thing that I'm like immediately excited about.
Very cool. Jimmy Gilchrist, thank you, buddy. I appreciate it, man. Wolfenstein, it's interesting that you guys have this legacy with these games. Like today's Wolfenstein, you wouldn't recognize it from yours, but you wouldn't recognize yours from the Silas one from 81.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And so
yeah,
I imagine people today playing Doom Eternal who were just kids who were like, the first Doom, what are you talking about? But that's really cool though. I found it with God of War, the new God of War, you wouldn't recognize the new God of War from the old God of War, but it's cool though that it still is living and breathing out there. Maybe even long after we're gone, they'll still be making Dooms, and your kids will be like, okay, Dad's been gone for a while, but my dad, helped lay that foundation. I think that's
exactly
neat, man. That's very, very cool. This is a guy named Fix who is coming in. Fix, you were on with John Romero of the Connecticut Romeros.
Hello. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Romero for his tweet about the stream, because I didn't know that Mr. Jaffe has a YouTube channel at all, and I'm a fan of both of your games. So, thank you a lot.
Thanks, man.
My question is, I've been a developer for a long time now, and I've been game developer for about 2 years. I worked at a company, and unfortunately the company crumbled. So I do have some experience in both game development and game design, but I'm always looking to improve in the designing the game department. I always feel like I'm just lacking a knack. And I'm interested in any ways of how to just generally what to observe, how to improve in essentially just thinking about game design?
Jeez, well, the best way to learn about game design is play a lot of games. And if you're trying to make a specific type of game, play games that intersect that design in some way that can help you like come up with a better idea for it, so if you want to make a shooter, play a lot of shooters because there's a lot of different ideas out there now. If you want to play a match 3 game, play the best ones that are the highest rated ones out there. And then you think, what can I do different? Like, what can I do that's better or different? Or maybe, someone who plays these kinds of games, maybe they would like this kind of match 3 game if it had this kind of stuff in it that is in no other match 3. Like something that that you would want to play, like what's missing. And then like just explore other games. And because there's so many ideas out there that you can apply to aspects of what you're trying to design. Like, as an example, World of Warcraft is basically all games. Like, every game is in that game.
Yeah.
It's so massive, and it has so many systems and so many secondary loops onto the core loop. And, focusing on, like, what are those core loops that the games that you're trying to identify, what are the secondary loops that can hook into the core loop? And what ideas for secondaries can you get from these other games? Because people love those secondary loops. That's what keeps people going nuts. Like, to keep doing the first core loop, you're doing these secondary loops that feed into the core. So what other secondaries are out there in other genres even that could be applicable to the core that you have?
But it's interesting because what you say, and I don't know if you've ever thought about teaching design or anything like that, but you should do like one of the master classes. But it amazes me how foreign the idea of thinking abstractly is about design. Like if you're talking about this loop feeds into that loop, whereas a lot of people just see the surface. I want to recommend to the caller 2 books. One of them is written by your wife. The first one is A Theory of Fun. By
Challenges,
yeah. So Ralph Koster is the guy who wrote one of my favorite design books that is so fun to read because it's almost like a graphic novel, but it's very much about the abstraction of video games and how you kind of see into the matrix and understand what's actually happening. And then Brenda Romero, but I think it would be under Brenda Braithwaite if you're looking for it.
Yeah.
And she wrote it with a partner, wrote a book called Challenges for Game Designers, but it's analog challenges. And that's another great book that really allows you to sort of see outside or underneath or to see the foundation of what a game is without all the flash and stuff. And I would highly recommend that if you're also thinking about trying to improve being a game designer.
Yeah, Challenges is great because when you focus on just analog design, it's right in front of you. And it lets you play with balance and rules and create systems without having to code. It's all just it's right in front of you. It's visual, and it's a lot cheaper to fail that way than to spend all this time programming with multiple people and then have it fail on a computer. So it's great to run through her exercises and just complete them, and you learn a lot.
All right, man.
Well, thank you a lot for recommendations, and thank you a lot for the answers.
Cool, man. Thank you, Fix. Talk to you later, buddy. Do you think she's a better designer than you are, your wife?
She is a really great designer.
She is.
Yeah, I mean, just look at Empire.
Well, I mean, everything from
it's
Empire
amazing.
to Train to Jagged Alliance. I mean,
Yeah.
There's a real interesting body of work there. She obviously hasn't ascended the commercial heights that you have, but do you feel competitive with her, or is it just fun?
Yeah, we don't compete. We actually work together. Like even Ravenwood Fair, she had like very important insights into design that I modified the game because of, and was the reason why so many people loved it. One of the reasons is the feel of the game is one of the reasons why people want to be in it, and she improved the feel of the game with design because she was feeling a certain thing playing it, and I didn't. And it was important to find out why she did and how to solve that. And when it was solved, it was like, oh, it doesn't change how I feel about it, but it changes how she feels about it. And so we're both winning. You know, like as players, we win. So yeah, she's super great, obviously at design,
she's fantastic.
and she had our RPG of the year. You know, with Wizardry 8, she had five RPG of the Year awards.
And I'm going to ask her. I'll talk to her about Jagged Alliance. But I mean, what a game, man! What a fucking game! All right, I'm going to bring in now. This guy's a journalist. Be careful, because I don't think he is all off the record. But this is Ricardo Estevez. Ricardo, you are on with John Romero.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, hi guys. So first of all, since you talked about Warcraft, John, I gotta ask, Alliance or Horde?
Well, it's Alliance.
Come on, man.
yeah, I've always been Alliance. You know why? Because Horde, they're just ugly.
No, they're not.
Y'all are a bunch of fucking nerds. Y'all are fucking nerds.
Oh yeah, baby. More seriously, man, you're amazing work you did for the gaming industry, but so long time, and I wonder, does the gaming industry still excite you? If not, why? If so, what specifically does it excite you about it?
Yeah, it does. It does, because things change all the time in the game industry, like daily. And if you know, and I'd say almost any discipline in the industry has changed dramatically over time. And even if you stick to one discipline, there's always something new to learn and new to do. Like there's always new tools, there's new techniques, there's new technology that all of that stuff cascades into. So if you are into what you do, you're in an industry where that stuff changes constantly, and it's super fun. And when you play indie games, like if you want to be refreshed, about like whether games are cool or not, man, play indie games, especially on a PC. There are so many great ideas. There was just a game maker. Game jam that just got done with 22,000 people took place. They made 5,200 games, and so many games with great ideas. And it's just. I can't say enough. The game industry is great because of the people that are in it and the ideas that they have. And that's what keeps me going.
Very cool. Thank you, Ricardo. Appreciate it, buddy. All right, let me bring in Goods. This is a guy named Goods. You are on with John Romero. Goods, are you there?
I hope he's got the goods.
Hey, John. John, you can hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Listen, let me do the jokes and you do the programming. Okay, so look, Goods is coming on. I'm fucking with you. I hope you guys. I can't even hear the guy. Goods, are you on? I can't either. Goods. You're
there. Oh, he was there for a second.
Come on, man. You're on with John Romero.
There he is. There he is.
The legendary Jonathan. Go.
Is this coming through? Yeah. Excellent.
Yep. Let's
go. I can hear you.
Great. Thanks, guys. Great stream. John, I'm curious. It was touched on a little bit early in the stream about your rock star status in the early days, and you were kind of one of the first, and Cliffy B and Carmack around there as well. I've been curious. I mean, I think from a marketing point of view and more exposure to devs, I think it's great. Was there ever a point where it felt like a bit more of a liability, that kind of exposure that you had, especially around Daikatana and kind of the marketing angle there, with you being such a central focus? Were you able to pursue creatively as much as you wanted, or did you have to kind of balance this celebrity status and game developer too much?
Yeah, with Daikatana, there was none of that had anything to do with the design of the game. I think that marketing the game too early is a mistake. And I think that's one of the reasons why why it turned out so badly. We should have just said nothing until 6 months before release. And I think that, it wouldn't have gotten as hammered, because people would have just gone, oh, hey, they're going to finally make their game, or release their game. But, I think that was just, all of the press was just not a good thing to do so early at that time. But none of that had anything to do with the design of the game.
All right. Thank you, Goods. Appreciate it, buddy. And there he goes. Oops. Sorry. All right. There we go. Okay. This is Stormite. Stormite, you were on with John Romero.
Hey guys.
Hey, man.
Hello.
So I'm 23 and would like to one day be a game dev and start to put some work towards it. But my question is, would you guys say it's too late? I need to be crunched up to catch up.
Absolutely, it's never too late at all. Not at all. Not even close.
Because you hear all this stuff on the internet. People have different opinions, so it's tough to get an honest one, honestly.
If you just spend focused time, like when you have some free time and you want to just get good at something, there's so much information on the internet that you can use to get really great at anything that you want to tackle. And it's also really helpful to find a mentor as soon as you can, because if you get stuck with anything that you're reading online, they can clear it up really quickly for you and unblock you, because it's all about unblocking in game dev. So if you can find someone that can help you out when you have questions and you are focused and just at whatever pace you want to learn, you can get really great. It's just up to finding the thing that you really want to do and just spending time on it. There's no rush to like become a great game designer. It's just get in there and start doing it. You could start tonight. There's nothing stopping you. You don't need permission.
Okay, well, thanks and sorry for the interruption.
You called in. You didn't interrupt. It was a call.
No, but when he was talking first.
Let me just tell you something. Watch the end of the stream. The last call I'm going to bring in a few minutes is a guy named Modawar, who's the mod. You will be inspired by his dev story. 18 months ago, the guy was out pressure washing buildings with pressure washers. Now he works at a professional game company and he goes home at night and he's making his own shooter. So
really?
Yeah, you goddamn right, really. And I'll tell you something.
Yeah.
Just do shit. Don't.
Yeah, make it. Yeah, make stuff.
Yeah.
Start now.
There's no reason not to. All right, man. See ya.
Thank you, guys.
All right, this is Andy Lee. Andy Lee, you're on with John Romero. Go. Andy Lee, where have you been all my life? You're not talking. Andy Lee.
He's trying to get.
You're muted, buddy. If you're trying to talk, your microphone icon is muted. I'm going to bring somebody else in the meantime. Try to fix that. All right, this is Northeast Monk with John Romero. Northeast Monk, go.
You've been moving.
What's up?
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm great.
Good.
Thank you for having me.
Anytime. Thanks for being here.
Awesome.
Man, I just have to say, you guys make just some of the best games in the world. Haven't played anything better. It comes close.
Thank you.
I'm just a little bit nervous. Big God of War fan, big Doom fan. Loved Doom since I was a kid. Oh, man, I can't begin to tell you how much those games just changed my life. I just wanted to get that out there. And, I may not have a lot to talk about, but I just want to say Dangerous Dave, awesome games. I still play them. I play the
I'm telling you, David.
Well, John said at the beginning before we got on, he says, and I've never played a Dangerous Dave game, but you were saying Dangerous Dave is huge in India and Pakistan.
In Pakistan.
Right? Like to this day, you said it's bigger than Doom ever was.
It was, yeah.
What? It's a side
because it was installed on every computer sold in those countries.
Nice. Okay. Sorry, Northeast, go ahead. Keep going, buddy. Sorry.
I just got to see, were you going to make any more of those games on mobile since you did the remaster of the original game?
So I did the remaster of Dave. I released a mobile remaster in 2015, I believe I think it was just iOS. And this year we're releasing a boxed set of Dangerous Dave that will play on basically your PC and your Mac.
Nice.
It's taken the original. It's an HD. It's the HD version. If you saw it on iOS, it's basically doing that on the desktop now. And all the other 8 Dangerous Dave games will be included in the box as well.
Oh, fantastic! And those are going to be HD as well.
No, those won't be HD. That would have been nice, but that would take a long time to make 8 games at HD. But those will be, runnable. Like even the Apple II version of Dave, you'll be able to run that. And there's a double Dangerous Dave that's on there that you'll be able to run.
and all of those are inside of a box. So it's a big box collector's edition that we're selling, and that'll be out later this year.
Oh, cool. Is that going to be through your site? I know GOG sells the
Yep.
collection now. Okay.
Yep, yeah, and maybe GOG even.
And there's a special edition where the Dangerous Dave will be me, and it's going to be my head.
Dangerous, yeah.
Dangerous Dave Jaffe. It's going to be fantastic. Thank you, North. Appreciate it, buddy. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, man. All right, he is off into the night. Okay, last couple of calls for John. Andy, did you get your shit sorted out? Andy, it's Jaffe and John. What's up?
I thank you. Appreciate that. Sorry about earlier.
No, that's fine. What's up?
So, question. So I'm a huge fan of Doom, of course, and I used to play tons of it when I was a teenager online. And one thing that I think people really appreciated with Doom, particularly Doom 2, is the multiplayer balance of weapons. And I wanted to ask John, you know, it's amazing that all the weapons have a great use, that the better weapons don't just naturally supersede the older weapons. In fact, many people argue that Quake had a much worse weapon balance where just the rocket launcher was dominant. So with Doom's weapon balance, was that just serendipity, or, you know, what kind of balance work evolved to make it the multiplayer experience that it became?
Yeah, we did focus on that. You know, and we got the weapons in as fast as we could so we could balance them over time. So we had the most amount of time in Doom's development balancing those weapons, and it was really important that things like there's a pistol and there's a chain gun. How are we going to like make you use a chain gun versus a pistol? And it's like, well, because a chain gun just mows stuff down, but if you don't have that much ammo, the pistol will always shoot very accurately at a distance, and the chain gun is random and it eats a bunch of ammo, right? So you go ahead and spam with that, and you get precise with the other. And the shotgun is like single barrel shotgun can hit more precisely at a distance, and the double barrel blasts things right up close. And so that was absolutely a design decision to introduce a new weapon but not negate any other weapons, especially if it used the same ammo. It absolutely had to have a positive effect for a specific purpose, and it usually was distance spaced.
Cool.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much, Andy. Appreciate you calling, bud.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
When you design something, John, do you see mechanics first, or do you see concept first? Like when you want to make a new weapon, are you thinking about how do I want to interact with the space, and then you design conceptually around it, or what comes first for you?
Well, usually I think about what is the weapon for, right? It's to blast enemies. What enemies, and how does that compare to all the other weapons? So it's almost like there's no level. It's like here's an enemy and here's a gun. How am I going to use that thing? Okay. It's almost like you visualize that I guess that scenario, and what's different about this versus this other one. You know, like how does it fit? Where does it fit? There's so many things that are part of the system, the design of that system, instantly all at the same time, that you just know because you're creating the game. And you know how that would be, and you also probably even think of the places where that would actually happen. Like, oh, this would be great in tight quarters, or this would be amazing in really open areas. Like the BFG in an open area is way better than a tight corridor. You know?
Do you think there's a lot more room to innovate in weapon design in shooters and games, or do you think that's is pretty mined, or that well is pretty dry?
I think there is, and I think that you would have to do design weapons a different way. A weapon is there to kill an enemy or do something to an enemy. So thinking about, well, what else could we do to these? Like what else? There's a look that people expect, and there's an operation people expect. And if you go beyond that, if you plus it, because you have to give them the base. The base has to be there for them to feel like this is a real thing. Right. But do things beyond that, like back in the 90s, there were alt fires on stuff. Right. Like you would have a firing, but then you'd have an alt fire that was even cooler or different. And, go beyond how can you go beyond an alt fire? And so the design, the whole thing is like, how much cool shit can you put in one weapon? Right. And can you do that for all of them? But make it feel like it's believable and that it's actually cool and it works with the world.
Keep each weapon having a reason to use it that doesn't supersede. Yes. Yeah, that's challenge. That's an interesting challenge. All right, last couple calls here. This is Bassoon. Of it doesn't matter. Let's go, baby. Buffoon.
Nice name.
Yeah, there you go. I can't top that. Buffoon. Go.
Hi guys, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yep.
Perfect. Just want to say a big fan of both of yours. Two questions, if I can. The first one, for both of you really, outside of games, I was just going to ask what sort of TV shows and films are you guys watching? Any hidden gems that we should be aware of? Just like to pick your brain on that.
So I just saw a really great documentary called The Staircase.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, it's great.
What is that about?
It's a guy who basically went on trial because he killed his wife, supposedly killed his wife, but there's no evidence that he killed his wife. And it's a really interesting setup, and there's just new crazy stuff revealed in almost every episode. Like it's really fun. It's really fun. And God, it's like, wow, drawn out. I mean, it's really good. That was like a recent cool one that I saw.
I just started watching. In fact, it's funny. George Broussard, right?
Yeah.
You worked with George, right?
Oh yeah.
I think it was somewhere you were talking in an interview that George drove you around looking for your apartment when you first moved.
Yeah.
So George used to run 3 Realms, but he's a friend of mine on Facebook, and he was raving about this zombie show on Netflix called, it's like something Blood or Dark Blood or something. And so I'm like, all right, fuck it, I'll watch it. And I watched the first episode, and I'm like, oh my fucking God, I thought zombies were done. So if you're looking for a show that's dark and violent and a really good action, I think it's called Dark Blood on Netflix. But then, all the Marvel stuff I'm watching, and I just watched In the Heights. And, but these days, honestly, I do this thing most Saturday nights called Pot and Popcorn, because now, not that it mattered, but now I can get edibles so legally in California that I'm catching up on a bunch of the movies really stoned. We stream it. Like, I just saw Battle Royale for the first time. I just saw I'd never seen Evil Dead, and I'm watching this.
Oh my God.
I'm watching it high as a kite, and everything is terrifying when you're high, which makes it so much fun. So
have you seen The Thing?
Yes, I didn't see The Thing until last year. Boy, that's a movie.
Oh my God.
It's a great fucking movie. I know. I only saw Alien last year. I had seen Aliens, Alien Covenant, all Prometheus, but I had never seen the original. Fuck.
Star Wars?
Oh yeah, well come on now. Yeah, I've seen come on. That's of course. But all right, Buffoon, what was your other question real quick?
It was just for you, Jeff. It was to ask what sort of tobacco you smoke. I always see you chewing your pipe on screen.
Oh, I don't smoke tobacco. This is I used to have a pot pipe that my brother got me that I like to just chew, and I had it on stream, and I was like, man, I'd love to have one of those Gandalf pipes. And somebody on the stream went and they custom made me, if you can see it, there's a sweet tooth and it says Jaffe. And then there's another one that's from Lord of the Rings that says Jaffe. And I just chew on them. I would love, my dad used to smoke a pipe. Sometime in the future, I'm going to put some tobacco in and smoke it because I miss that smell. But I don't really smoke. I just like to chew on it.
You can buy candles that have that smell.
Ooh, okay. All right, There you go. All right, Buffoon. Thanks, buddy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cheers, guys.
All right, man. All right, let me bring in Salman Ali, who I think was saying in the chat that, he had, I'll let you. Salman, you're on with John Romero. Go. Salman Ali, you are muted right now, buddy. Turn off your mute. There you go.
There it is.
Hi.
What's up?
Hi. Can you both hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, I can't believe I'm here.
What happens? I can't believe you're here.
I'm just curious to know, the PSX version of Doom felt a lot more darker than from its PC release. I'm just curious to know why is this that case? Why the PSX version of Doom wasn't ported to PC?
Well, because the PSX version of Doom was made by Midway, and instead of them porting Doom to the PSX, because Midway was such a trusted company and so good, we said, do whatever you want to it on the PSX. Go ahead and go nuts. And like, they did, and they did such a great job. The lighting was amazing. It was colored lighting, which we didn't have on the PC. The music, Aubrey Hodges' music, geez.
Exactly,
it was a great version. It was a great version of Doom. Definitely,
And,
probably the best console version.
Well, the reason I never had a chance to complete Doom on my PS1 was because it was a bit pixelated, and so that's why I never had a chance to complete it, and I continued playing it on my PC instead.
Everything back then was pixelated.
Yeah,
it was
true.
320 by 200, man.
Secondly, can you put this rumor to rest? What does BFG gun stands for?
Big fucking gun.
So that's a confirmed too.
Was that?
Absolutely.
Was that a rumor? What else? What else would it have stand? What else would it stand for?
Biofusion gun?
Or
something like that. Yeah.
Broccoli flatulence gun? I mean, we could come up with all kinds of things. All right, thanks, buddy. I appreciate the call. All right, last 2 calls of the day. I think we've already heard from this guy. I don't know why he's back. Maybe he's got something important. Andy Lee, are you back? What are you doing? What are you doing?
Oh, yeah, Andy.
If it's okay, I have a question for John and a question for David.
It's got to be quick. Go fast.
For John. John Cash was the network programmer at Quake, and then he went on to work at Blizzard, where he was the lead programmer of World of Warcraft. Did you make with them, and did he tell you like cool development stories over the years?
Yes, he did. Well, he didn't tell me the dev stories over the years because he couldn't talk about what he was doing, but he did during, I think it was the E3. He came over when I was showing something off. I don't know what it was, probably Daikatana. And he basically was just like, oh man, we're making a really cool game. It's called an MMO RPG. And, got a really great team. And I'm like, man, congrats. That's awesome. And I can't wait to see it. And, and so he brought some of his coders over to say hi, and I could meet those guys. And John's just a really, really nice guy. And every time I go to Blizzard, he comes out and we just have lunch and hang out and stuff. He's still there. He's really, really great.
Cool.
Awesome.
All right.
David,
yes.
Question for you. During the 90s, many game designers came out of that, modding Wolfenstein and Doom and Quake. Was that in your wheelhouse at all, and why or why not?
I'm not a tech guy at all. Half of what John has said today, I'm like going, I am an idiot. I don't know what the fuck he's talking about. That's not true. But I'm not. My sort of code base. I loved coding BASIC as a kid, and that's kind of as far as I ever got. And so I'm really not a detail guy. The closest thing it came is when I was originally designing God of War. I was really influenced by Deus Ex's emergent gameplay, because that was the first time I had really seen that in a game in such a way. And so I did a mod in, I think it was Quake, that showed off some of that to the designers. Like, I made my own to kind of say, this is kind of what I'm hoping for. That never became God of War, but no, I was never that, like, I'm not a great level designer like John is. That was never sort of what I did. All right, he's off. Last 2 quick calls and we're done. Not that I want to be done. I could talk to John all day, but I know we've taken a lot of the man's time. Player Purple, you are on with John Romero.
Hey, what's going on, Jaffe and John? Can you hear me?
Yep, we're doing.
Hell yeah.
We're doing a stream. What are you doing? What are you wearing?
What am I wearing?
Yeah.
Wearing a Black Panther t-shirt.
I hope it's purple. Where's the purple?
It is purple. It's blue and purple. So yeah.
Okay.
Right. So what's your question?
My question. So first of all, first things first has to be said. Both John and Jaffe, thanks so much for what you give into the industry. I've played your games endlessly, love them endlessly. So thank you so much. So for me, I'm a programmer in school right now who really wants to work on games someday. And the area that I really, really want to focus on is making a game that could make a great esport like multiplayer experience, right? And my favorite type of esport is free-for-all deathmatch. So thank you, John, for that. That mode was huge in the 90s. Obviously Doom, but even like Smash Brothers, Twisted Metal, Halo. When Halo went into esports, it was a huge with that mode specifically. So, and that was cool back then. But I don't know. I think you fast forward to now, right? And maybe it's just me, but I feel like looking at esports, looking at like, the official ranked servers of games, most developers kind of focus on like 1v1 stuff only, team stuff only. It seems like they don't really see free-for-all deathmatch as a serious competitive mode anymore, right?
Yeah. I actually don't like free-for-all.
Wow.
I don't. I like one-on-one. I like one-on-one. Like
I do too.
One of the reasons why I like head-to-head is because, especially when it's not just a simple arena, but it's a level. That's like an actually designed level, because the person that knows the level the best is going to know all these crazy shortcuts about it, and it's not just a square with weapons, So like, and there are some really great. If you play Quake or you play Easy Quake / End Quake, there are some levels like Arrow Walk that are super cool and are really pretty intricate, even though it's in a very small space. The teleportation is insane, and just the air, the multiple levels and stuff. And like, to me, like, that's more of what I'm into, is one-on-one in one of those levels, because getting hit in the back from someone you couldn't see because they just spawned in, it just doesn't feel fair to me. Like, I want to know that I'm facing against somebody, or team-based, I'm on a team and we have some sort of a strategy to take on the enemy, like a tactic to use. Like, I like that more than I just got a bouncing grenade in the back by someone who just tossed something in a box and who knew that he was there. So, yeah.
No. Yeah, like, don't get me wrong. Like, I love my 1v1 and team games too. I guess the thing for me with free for all is, like, I guess, like, maybe it's more of a fantasy thing, but like, I think it's just really cool to like be this one dude who, in an ideal scenario, it's like, 10 people enter into an arena, and then, one dude clearly knows how to, like, fight other people at once. I'm not trying to say any particular game has done this, amazingly. Well, I take that back, actually. There have actually been a few games that I think have done that well. But what I'm trying to say is, I don't know, you seem to dislike free-for-all, and it sounds like from what I just heard, it sounds like, someone kind of like not earning their proper kill. Does that sound like, does that sound kind of accurate? Yeah. No, I agree with you. I hate kill stealing, right? I think kill stealing is complete BS, right? And that's, well, anyway, I don't want to get too down into this rabbit hole.
Player Purple, thank you, buddy. Thanks for the call, man. I appreciate it, bud. Call back anytime.
Brenda has a question.
All right. Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, Brenda has a question that she wants.
Where is she?
I think she's going to give me this on a piece of paper.
Okay. It's just the hand.
Yep. All right, her question.
Yeah.
I would love to see you make a game together when.
Let me tell you a quick story. So when I had left my last company before I founded my new company, I had this idea, and it never got very far. I may have already told you this, but I wanted to go get someone to fund sort of a reality web series where you got $2 million, I got $2 million, and Cliff Bleszinski got $2 million. And it was basically competing first-person shooters, and the web series would chronicle that year and a half we had to make, and then builds would go up every couple of weeks on the website so people could give feedback and all that. And at the end, we would see who made the best shooter. That was like my fantasy. And I was just
it's like the pro level game jam,
yes,
for
that's
a year and a
right.
half.
Brenda, I will tell you, I am having so much fun doing what I'm doing right now that it would take a lot. I mean, like I am still doing
a lot of money.
No. It would, like, I'm doing some consulting work right now on a game. Actually, it is a mob based game. But I'm loving this right now, and but I don't know. You never know. I would love, here's actually what I'll say, because people have said that before. Would you make a game with Cliff? Would you make a game with Kojima? And I'm sure you get this question all the time as well. It's not that any of I think John's awesome. I'd love to work with John. But end of the day, though, John and I probably do the same thing. Like, you don't want too many cooks. You can only have one captain of the ship. And I probably want to go over here, and you probably want to go over there. And how do you do that, right? How do you? I don't know if there's a magic there.
It's hard when you have these co-lead possible
Right.
situations. You
That's
know,
right.
like has this happened before?
That's right. Right. No.
I don't even know if it has.
Here's
you know?
tell Brenda. The answer, Brenda, is the best you're gonna get. Brenda is John and me and Cliff and you going into first-person shooters or going into Rainbow Six Siege and trolling the fuck out of these motherfucking punk kids. That's the goal. We're making a clan. We're making a goddamn clan.
That's it. It's a clan. Yeah.
The last call is Rob the Mod. This guy is our mod. He's the guy who was pressure washing 18 months ago. He works for a game company now. He's making a shooter now. He wanted to talk to you. Rob the Mod, you were on with the great John Romero.
Hey, fellas.
Congrats, Rob.
What's up, man?
Oh, thank
How's
you.
it going?
Hey, okay, so I just got in the mail not too long ago. I got my big box of Sigil.
Oh, hell yeah.
Dude, it is badass. Like, there's so much in it. Like a floppy disk, I've played so much of it.
Did you play the Buckethead soundtrack?
Non-stop. Oh, dude, the soundtrack is awesome.
Nice.
Oh, man. I've also, Jaffe got me into playing Empire of Sin. I've been playing so much of that on Game Pass.
Right.
I'm having a blast. But what I wanted to ask you was, I guess it's short, but is it an unofficial episode or is it like an official episode 5? Because I'm wondering, how were you able to sell an official episode 5 of Doom at all?
Okay, so this is really, like, you wouldn't know this if you hadn't been there since the very beginning when Doom was released.
Yeah.
But Doom mods have been sold for a long time. Like, thousands of levels have been sold in retail on the store shelves by lots of companies that it had nothing to do with it. So there's lots of years of many mods, like D-Zone, D2 Zone, lots of specific episodes sold. Like there's one called Strack for Doom, maybe for Quake, but lots of different levels have been sold for Quake and Doom. And the thing is, those levels don't have any data in them that is id Software copyrighted data. It's all original data that the modder created, so it's okay to sell them. And with Sigil, there's nothing in Sigil that is copyrighted data from id Software. So, it really Buckethead stuff is the new copyrighted stuff into things that we put in it, we created. So that's why we could sell them. The artwork on the cover, same thing, licensed.
That makes a lot more sense to me now.
Yeah,
That's awesome, man. I'm enjoying it, man. I've been listening to the soundtrack while working on my own game. Along with the Blade Runner soundtrack, I'm digging both of those.
Dude, same here. I listened to the 84 and the 2043 or something.
Oh, man.
I like them both, but the original Evangelis one was still.
Evangelis,
I put that on. I put it on so often.
It's so good. It's like an hour and 30 minutes of pure gold.
Yeah, yeah.
This is like eavesdropping on a fucking date. You guys are connecting. You guys are bonding. This is. I feel like I should give you guys your own room. Good for you guys.
Don't you like the Blade Runner soundtrack, David?
You know what? I've never listened to it. I did not.
Oh man.
I didn't. I will.
You know what?
Yeah, I will get it. because I hear it's great.
Just go to YouTube. Just get on YouTube and they have the whole thing on there.
No, I do like the Blade Runner. That's the one that actually opens with Decker doing the.
Yeah.
I like.
Yeah,
that.
the scan. Yeah.
That's great. That is a great soundtrack.
That is all.
All right, Rob, are you good? Anything else for John?
I'm good, but I have one more to go, and that is, what did you think of Dwayne Johnson's Doom?
Whose?
The Rock.
Dwayne Johnson, The Rock.
Oh yeah, bad movie.
It was
not good.
It was
not good.
All right, fellas, I appreciate you. Thanks for having me.
Rob, thanks for all you do, buddy.
Thanks.
I appreciate it, man.
I appreciate you.
All right. Okay, so the last thing, I got 2 quick super chats, and we want to talk about posters real quick. Last 2 super chats came in. John says, James Gilchrist, how do you get weapon balancing down perfect in the OG Doom without perks or upgrades? I'm not going to speak for John, but my gut would say because you don't have perks and upgrades. But I'll let John talk.
Yeah, well, we do. In Quake we do have an upgrade, right? It's the quad. In Doom, we didn't have any, but it was all balanced. Like it really, we played the hell out of the game the entire year. The player was the thing to balance against. So the player has 100 health. Everything goes off of that. So any other enemy is going to have more or less, right? So the human, zombie humans are going to have a little less because they're jacked up, and the imp's going to have some more, and everything else is just going to have more. And we basically had to decide, like, when you hit a person, how many hits before they should go down at 100 health. And if it felt good, then leave it. And that just translated to all the enemies. So the enemies got more health, and then did it take too long to burn that enemy down? We'll lower the health, until it felt like a good amount of ammo that you used to take it down. And it was just playing it over and over like thousands of times.
Do you think that time to kill has gotten too short in modern shooters, or do you like it where it is now?
You know what? It depends on the shooter. Like, I love tactical shooters where it's one hit and you're dead. Like, I love that. And plus, people love insta-jib even in Quake and Doom. Like, they love the fact that they could just rail someone once and they're just dead, and it's down to that, like, quick scope, Right. So it's fun both ways. I like I like both. I like the tactical shooter approach where it's like you do not let them see you. Because if they see you and they shoot you, you're dead, Or if you're not dead, you're almost dead.
Right. Okay.
So I like it all. It just depends on the setting and everything.
Got it. All right. Last super chat is to Wookie Fragger says, "What kind of car would the Doom guy drive in Twisted Metal?" Oh, okay. He would basically kill Mad Max and steal his car. Would be my answer. John, what's your answer?
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
That'll work.
I think the Interceptor is awesome. That car's badass.
I haven't had Ed Boon on the show yet, but I mean, there is no Twisted Metal without Doom. Twisted Metal is Doom in Mortal Kombat by way of Mario Kart Battle Mode. I mean, it's that simple. It's exactly what it is. Last question from Elias. John, would you work for Xbox at id Software, assuming you weren't doing what you're doing now?
Jeez. That's a tough decision. I don't know. I just like doing what I want to do, and working for someone else, you don't really get to do that.
I think once you have your own companies, it's hard to go back and work for someone else, I think. All right, those are all the questions. Thank you, guys. I have one final question for John Romero. Obviously not now because you're happily married and there were periods you were involved, but did you ever have groupies? Like, was that a thing for you? Did people want to sleep with you, like women?
Well, no, it wasn't a thing. Like,
okay.
Playing shooters and stuff was like the focus. It was always like about playing the game. It wasn't about playing people. It was,
right.
It was always just like.
I only ask because a lot of people will ask me that, and I'm like, no, I've never. It's not like that in games. But I figure with the hair and all that and the Ferrari, maybe there was like it was different for you. And obviously the level that you were at was like, a big, no one's been at that level for the most part. So, but even with you, it wasn't women knocking at QuakeCon going, "John Romero, here's my pantyhose." Nothing like that.
Nothing like a rock stars. And,
It's the shitty version of a rock star, kids.
Yeah.
Learn to play guitar. Fuck C++ or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah. John Romero, we did it.
Great.
We did it.
Listen, all right.
I so appreciate thank you, man. Thank you for the time. Thank you for the games. I so appreciate it. Thank you for Empire of Sin. If you haven't, I have posters. John Romero is giving away posters. How can I do that? In terms of, do I get you? You'll send me codes.
I'll send you. Yeah.
Okay. John's got some posters, really cool ones that they're selling in the Romero Game Shop. If you hit me up on Discord, I'll do some trivia based on John Romero's life.
Yeah, good idea.
That he has talked about in the stream.
Whoever answers first.
That's
boom.
right. I'll do it later today, and I'll get you the code that you can go and pick that up. But thank you, John. And if Brenda, you're still watching, if I haven't made you say goddamn no, I will be calling you in about a week because I would love to have you on to talk about Train.
She would love to be on here.
Alliance, Empire of Sin. All the good stuff. So, but in the meantime,
awesome.
John, thank you, buddy. I'm going to stay on with the chat for a few minutes, but we're going to let John go. We'll talk to you later, John. Thanks, bud.
All right, take it easy. Bye.
Bye. And there goes the great Jonathan Romero into the early evening of Ireland. Fellas, Peapod wants to know if John Romero could take John Carmack in a fight. I should have asked him that. My guess would be yeah. Carmack, at least from what I've seen, is he's a skinny guy, small guy. John's got that, I don't fucking know. He's got more girth. He's not a big guy, but I don't fucking know. Don't get me off. Brenda's on the stream. Ask Brenda if her husband can take John Carmack. Who the fuck knows? But anyway, fellas, there you go. I want to give you some heads up. I will be streaming later today Earth Defense Force World Brothers, which is sort of the Minecraft version of Earth Defense Force. It's really fun. I'll be streaming that along with some new demos from the stream demo, the Steam demo. Brenda, if you are watching still, please let John know, and you and your team, play Ultra Kill and play Severed Steel. Those games are amazing fucking shooters. And then there's a guy who is making the very first game about the Holocaust. And he is going to come on the show. I'm hoping to have him on next week to talk about and show a little bit of his game, which is actually going to be on, I can't tell you what it's going to be on, but it's actually like a fucking video game about being in the Holocaust, which I have not seen before. I don't think has been done before. So stay tuned for that. And then I'll be back later in the week with a normal Gabbin' Games episode. Everybody, thank you. Rob the Mod, thank you. I think we had a bunch of mods in today. Thank you guys very, very much for keeping everything on the straight and narrow. Rob, and I think I saw Bukaki, and I think I saw Rathy. I appreciate it, you guys. And thank you guys for watching. All the super chats, all the good conversation. We will see you on a future stream. Here you go. You've